Alfred clenched his fists, trying to comprehend what had happened. His heart was burning along with the palace. The world he had protected was crumbling before his eyes. His face tightened, reflecting the internal struggle. The silence in the chaos made him think about the values he stood for and the betrayal. Maria and her companion stood on the ground in despair, their eyes full of anger directed at Alfred. They shouted accusations, expressing their anger at the destruction caused to him. Alfred declared that he would no longer submit to their authority. His words sounded like a challenge and a warning. His face, sword in hand, showed determination and pain. Alfred believed that the country and its people he served no longer deserved his sacrifice. Giving in to despair, Alfred left Maria and her companion prostrate on the ground, walking into the darkness. His eyes, filled with emptiness, reflected the inner darkness that was taking hold of him. The emotional scene is replaced by a girl with a phone. Her voice sounds delighted by the ending. She ponders what will happen next, looking at the screen with a notification about an update. Full of determination, she starts a new day. Words about the need to work hard despite everything that happens ring in her head. This inspires her to new achievements. The office staff are amazed by her decisive behavior. She vehemently protests against the new assignment, arguing that her potential in another area will bring more benefit. The manager, frowning, reminds her that her bluntness recently brought a new employee to tears. The scene ends on a note of tense judgment, leaving a sense of unresolved conflict. The girl is outraged by the current situation, calling it hazing, and says that after what happened, her colleague even came to quit, which left a deep mark on her perception of what was happening. The colleague justifies herself by saying that her actions were aimed at preventing another employee from making mistakes in the future. Her angry tone shows the tension of the situation and the internal conflict. The boss, having listened to the complaints with restraint, remains unmoved. He coldly states that the decision has already been made, despite the girl's merits, which emphasizes his firmness and lack of emotion. The girl says goodbye to her boss, who smiles and sarcastically says, "Take care of yourself." This moment emphasizes her confusion and the feeling of injustice of what is happening. She is demoted, citing excessive emotionality and dependence on her superiors. This causes her to feel deeply resentful and disappointed in her professional environment. Returning home, the girl tries to comprehend what happened over a glass of wine. She is perplexed as to why everything turned out this way, since she considered herself the best employee. Her emotions run high. She exclaims that her achievements have gone unnoticed and she does not deserve this treatment. This is the moment of her internal resistance and awareness of injustice. The girl furiously scolds her boss, considering his actions unjustified. She cannot accept the fact that he found an insignificant reason to get rid of her, increasing her sense of resentment. In an attempt to distract herself, she seeks solace in her phone, assuming that at least something will be able to lift her spirits and distract her from the hardships of the situation. Her expectations for updates on her device remain unanswered, reflecting a general feeling of uncertainty and emptiness, highlighting her frustration with the world around her. The girl studies scenes from the novel on her tablet, where the evil Maria mocks her stepson Alfred. She is outraged by her actions and admires the justice of Maria's punishment for her actions. Lost in thoughts about the novel, the girl begins to fall asleep, thinking about how she would behave if she were in the hero's place. She strongly empathizes with poor Alfred and dreams of correcting the injustice. The girl suddenly realizes that her life is also filled with losses, like the heroes of the novel. She remembers the tragic moments of her life and realizes that her pain is connected with someone who caused her suffering. The image of a man with a terrifying smile comes to her mind. The girl feels pain and disappointment, blaming him for her lost dreams and the bitterness of the past. When she wakes up, she feels strangely drunk and thirsty for water. The sensations are so unusual that she wonders if she is dreaming. She moves slowly to understand what is happening. She sees in the mirror not her own face, but Maria's. She is overcome with fear. She cannot comprehend how this was possible, and she wonders who she is now. Suddenly, a maid appears, addressing the girl as Mistress Maria. This frightens and confuses the heroine even more. She begins to realize that she has found herself in another world. The girl in the guise of Maria tries to understand what is happening around her. She feels lost and alien in the new reality, not understanding how to adapt to this role. A little boy with kind eyes appears before her, Alfred Brown. He evokes incredible sympathy in her, and she begins to understand that now her task is to protect him. Seeing her reflection in the phone, the girl realizes that she really is in a novel. She is overcome with determination to change the plot and make Alfred's life happy. The girl tells about a kingu called The Path to a Hero, which tells about the heroic prince Carlos. The author describes a shiny sword, symbolizing honor, and hints that the story is not over, leaving room for reflection. The novel introduces the villain Alfred Brown, a man with a dark look and a dangerous aura. The protagonist reads the story to the last chapter, but never learns the ending, leaving the fate of the characters in the dark. Waking up in another reality, the girl realizes that she has been reborn in the world of the novel. With horror, she realizes that she has become Maria, the stepmother of the main villain, and her fate is intertwined with his. She remembers how she fell asleep in her world and is horrified to realize her new role. The heroine realizes that she must change the course of events and her destiny in order to survive. When Maria meets Alfred, she learns that he will become her killer in the future. This realization scares her, but she decides that she will not allow this to happen, starting to act from the first minutes. She approaches Alfred, trying to establish contact with him. With a smile and a soft voice, she tries to befriend the child, despite her fear that he might harm her. The boy reacts to her attempts with fear. He is afraid of her intentions, and the distant tension in their relationship becomes apparent. However, Maria tries to calm him down. Realizing that her actions have left a bad impression, she decides to act more cautiously, but as the situation worsens, her sincerity does not reach the boy's heart. Alfred sits wary, not understanding Maria's intentions. She realizes that the lack of communication between them is preventing them from resolving misunderstandings, and she seeks ways to correct this. A complicated relationship is just beginning to develop. Maria accepts the challenge of fate and decides that she will do everything possible to prevent a tragic end. Maria lies on the ground, her eyes filled with despair. She thinks about how fate is leading to the inevitable moment when Alfred will take her life. The blood on the blade symbolizes the end of her path. Memories of office life haunt her. Her boss harshly criticizes her, pointing out the envy and resentment she felt toward her superiors. The past seems to remain a part of her pain forever. Maria sits thoughtfully in a luxurious room, thinking about reincarnation. She wants a second chance to change everything and avoid the tragedy that haunts her. The maid notices her fatigue and assumes that the reason lies in her recent marriage. Maria looks tired. Her thoughts are clearly occupied with something more serious than household chores. She suddenly remembers an important detail. Her gaze focuses and her heart stops. Maria understands that her inner tension is connected to something much bigger than stress. The doctor confirms the guesses of those around her. He believes that the changes in her condition are connected with stress after marriage. Everyone around is trying to understand what is happening to Maria. Looking back, Maria realizes that Alfred's abuse began shortly after she got married. These events seem to her the key to understanding her destiny. She looks at her reflection, realizing that if history continues as before, a tragic ending awaits her. The thought of inevitability frightens her. The absence of her own voice becomes a real punishment for her. She feels that this is the worst gift that fate could give her in her new life. In despair, she drinks water, not paying attention to those around her. The maid is worried, but Maria has already lost hope of salvation. Her thoughts about the future are clouded by fear of the future. Alfred Brown, confident and majestic, challenges his destiny. He decides to leave his previous plans to choose the path of a hero. The fate he must change is reflected on the phone screen. Maria is determined to fight against the pre-written script. Her face expresses fortitude despite her inner doubts. She decides to go against all the rules. Maria sits and ponders how to establish contact with Alfred. Her gaze is full of determination, but in her heart she knows it will not be easy. Her dedication to the cause leaves no doubt. Despite the loss of her voice, Maria is determined to act. She understands that only active steps can change her fate. Her spirit is not broken, and she is ready to fight to the end. Maria runs into little Alfred, who looks scared and confused. She tries to gain his trust by holding a note asking how he is, but the situation becomes tense. Alfred dropped the toy and stepped aside, as if refusing to accept help. Maria senses the growing tension between them, but still tries to win his trust. Alfred suddenly runs away, leaving Maria confused. She reaches out to stop him, but the boy moves further and further away. Her thoughts are preoccupied with the question of why he is avoiding her so much. Maria picks up the discarded toy, thinking about how hard it will be to befriend Alfred. Her gaze is focused, and her resolve is growing. She knows her journey will be long. Her dress proves to be inconvenient for active action, adding to the complexity of the situation. Maria feels frustrated, as even getting close to Alfred becomes a task. Recalling her destiny, Maria realizes that Alfredo is facing a tragedy on his 16th birthday. She understands that she must change this future to protect him and fulfill her duty. Almost nothing is known about Alfred Brown's childhood, as he was described as a villain. However, the past of this boy with kind eyes holds many mysteries that could explain his difficult fate. Alfred ponders the hidden dangers of his new world, realizing that much remains beyond the known. An inner voice tells him to be extremely careful in every step. Maria spots Alfred in the bright library, full of elegant details. The boy, with sadness in his eyes, turns away and continues on his way, holding on to the toy he carries with him. Lost in her thoughts, Maria begins to descend the curved staircase, but her long dress causes her to feel clumsy. There is tension in her movements, and the situation takes an unexpected turn. Maria stumbles, falling down the stairs. Her uncomfortable dress irritates her, and her thoughts become confused. Alfred's toy ends up on the floor nearby, as if reflecting his fear. Alfred watches the scene with alarm. He is frozen, not knowing how to react, and his inner fear is growing. Maria, having fallen, tries to cope with the situation but looks confused. Maria stands up, irritated by what happened. Her gaze is full of anger and embarrassment, but she tries to hide these feelings. Alfred, seeing her emotions, decides to smile, but his smile seems forced. Zakar, a duke with a noble bearing, enters the hall. His appearance creates a spectacular atmosphere, filling the space with tension. Everyone present immediately pays attention to him. Maria recognizes Zakar, her husband. Her exclamation reflects mixed feelings, surprise and indignation. Zakar looks at her coldly, but there is hidden warmth in his gaze. This unexpected turn heightens the tension between the characters. Their eyes meet, and there is something more than just a meeting in the air. It seems as if their destinies are intertwined in a complex knot. Maria, finding herself in a new world after reincarnation, catches herself thinking that even if everything did not go as she expected, the local Duke Zakar is the embodiment of beauty. This alone is enough to not regret her fate. Looking at Zakar, Maria tries her best to collect her thoughts. He, in turn, asks in bewilderment why she is sitting on the floor, looking so out of place in a luxurious hall full of guests. Zakar restrainedly expresses his disapproval of Maria's behavior, calling her situation indecent. He is strict, but his gaze leaves Maria with a feeling of shame and embarrassment. Maria is at a loss as to how to respond to the Duke's reproaches. Her emotions overwhelm her, and she asks him again in bewilderment, not hiding her irritation. At this time, Zakar, having switched to other matters, is already discussing the important issue of import with his assistant. Maria remains on the floor, feeling that she is being ignored, and begins to get angry. Outraged by the Duke's indifference, Maria loudly declares that she has fallen and cannot get up. She sarcastically offers Zakar to help her, hinting that this is what polite husbands do. Young Alfred Brown, holding a stuffed toy, hears from Zakar that he is already 5 years old, but he still plays with toys. The Duke sternly reminds him that such entertainment is unacceptable for the future heir. Zakar explains to Alfred that he will one day take his place and must prepare to serve the king. He demands that the child stop wasting time on toys and focus on preparation. Ignoring the stuffed animal, Zakar takes Alfred's hand and declares that it is time to practice fencing. Alfred looks confused, squeezing the stuffed animal tighter. Maria, watching what is happening, understands that the boy does not like what is happening. Her gaze becomes thoughtful, concern is read in it. Elsewhere, a little girl shyly hides behind a door. She watches as her friends stand at the threshold, and a grown man tells her that she is busy with her studies and cannot go out. Through the window, the girl sees her friends happily playing outside. She mentally realizes that she would also like to be with them and enjoy carefree moments. In the room, a girl with her head down tries to concentrate on her studies. Tears are shining in her eyes. She is sad because she missed the opportunity to play with her friends. Maria suddenly intervenes, holding Alfred back. She apparently intends to explain something to Zakar, realizing that the situation is unfair to the child. Maria understands that Alfred wants to play, not study at this moment. Her thoughts are focused on how to convey to Zakar the need to change the approach to upbringing. Zakar is surprised, not understanding what is happening. Maria is internally outraged because she cannot voice her thoughts, but her actions speak louder than words. Maria looked at Zakar, holding the boy Alfred by the shoulders, and angrily said that he was his son. She demanded recognition of the obvious, pointing to his features, but Zakar looked stunned and withdrawn. Zakar, frowning, asked irritably if Maria was making fun of him, and stated that if she had nothing to say, it would be better to leave him alone. His expression was a combination of anger and inner turmoil. After a tense conversation, Zakar turned and left, leading Alfred by the hand. Maria was left standing alone, looking after them, her gaze full of disappointment and hidden pain. In Alfred's memories, his mother appeared before him, cloaked in soft light. She told him that his gift was the ability to hear the hearts of the people he touched. She warned him to keep it a secret, even from his father. She put her finger to her lips, asking him to keep this secret. Her gentle face and the warmth in her eyes gave the boy comfort, but there was a hidden warning in her words. The mother hugged Alfred tenderly, saying that this secret should remain only between them. The boy agreed with a slight smile, promising not to tell anyone about his gift. Little Alfred, looking thoughtfully ahead, recalled how his mother had given him this power. He experienced mixed feelings, gratitude and slight sadness, but thoughts about his mother warmed his heart. Zakar coldly asked Alfred not to cause any more inconvenience. The boy pressed himself against Maria's dress, feeling her support, and his eyes showed uncertainty and depression from the Duke's words. Zakar took Alfred by the hand and said that they were leaving. The gesture was decisive, but there was a sense of detachment in it. The boy obeyed silently, leaving Maria's gaze behind. Alfred, following Zakar, felt that something had changed. The last time he touched his hand, his feelings were completely different, as if now Zakar had become a stranger to him. Alfred looks at the elegant woman in the purple dress with surprise. He thinks that this is his new mother, experiencing mixed feelings about her severity and mystery. The woman confidently expresses gratitude for the opportunity to become Duke Zakar's wife. Her words sound flattering, but there is a mysterious coldness hidden in her smile. Zakar answers with restraint, paying tribute to politeness. His face remains inscrutable, but his eyes reflect the tension of what is happening. The woman, approaching Zakar, leans lightly on his shoulder. She reminds him that they are now a couple, emphasizing her claims to the role of Duchess. She turns to Zakar with a gentle smile, offering to discuss a variety of issues. However, her gaze remains appraising, as if she is analyzing everything around her. Zakar is silent, his face expressing restrained distrust. He seems to already understand that there is something more hidden behind her words than just a greeting. The woman notices Alfred. Her face takes on a friendlier expression, but her gestures seem forced, as if she were playing the role of a caring mother. She happily declares that she is happy to have such a sweet son. Alfred looks at her warily, catching something insincere in her words. She greets the boy, holding out her hand to embrace him. Alfred looks with distrust at her jeweled gloves, which seem cold and alien. The woman changes abruptly. Her tone becomes threatening. She touches Alfred's face, and the boy feels an ominous energy radiating from her. Her thoughts are full of contempt and a premonition of future troubles. Alfred Brown is troubled by how the man who once thought he was a problem suddenly began to treat him differently. He feels as if the world around him is becoming strange and unpredictable, which causes him confusion. Maria, a girl with white hair, is deep in her thoughts. She remembers difficult moments of the past, when life was colored by strict rules and painful experiences that suddenly cover her again. Maria realizes that her father was an extremely strict man. His rules left her with no freedom, a curfew, a ban on playing with friends. All this turned her childhood into a series of restrictions. As Maria grows older, she realizes that her father saw happiness in women only in marriage and having children. He viewed men as suitable candidates, as if he were creating her future without her participation. At the dinner table, Maria argues vigorously with her father, disagreeing with his views. Her indignation grows. She makes it clear that his opinion is only his truth, not hers. In a fit of emotion, Maria declares that she has no intention of getting married. She rejects the idea of living for someone else's expectations and desires, breaking the stereotypes that her father imposed on her since childhood. The father loses his composure. The angry cries become louder, but Maria stands firm. She will no longer allow herself to be commanded and refuses to submit to the dictates of his will. Clenching her fists, Maria resolutely walks away from the table, ignoring her mother's worried voices. A firm conviction is born in her heart. She will determine her own destiny. As Maria walks out the door, she proclaims her choice. She confidently declares that it is up to her to decide what happiness is. This moment becomes a turning point in her life. Maria packs her things and leaves the house. She knows she will never return there again. Her independent path begins with this determination to create her own future without the dictates of the past. Maria, pondering her fate, comes to the conclusion that marriage to a man resembling her father has become the worst test in her life. She is tormented by memories and tries to find meaning in what happened. Duke Zakhar's attitude irritates Maria. He is often rude and insensitive, not realizing that sometimes it is worth keeping silent or expressing your thoughts differently to avoid conflicts. There is a deep melancholy in her eyes. Reflecting on the events of the past, Maria finds herself unable to shake off a feeling that she cannot fully understand. Watching Alfred, Maria sees herself as a child. A small, vulnerable boy with a cat in his arms awakens forgotten memories in her and a desire to protect him. The Duke teaches little Alfred fencing despite his young age. Maria does not understand why the child should be forced to do such a difficult task, and her heart breaks with worry for the boy. Zakhar reproaches Maria for her attempts to intervene, demanding that she stop causing inconvenience. These words shock her, causing her to retreat and doubt her actions. Maria decides to remain silent, following Zakhar's instructions. She suppresses her emotions, watching what is happening from the side, although her heart is weighed down by anxiety. After some time, Maria secretly watches Zakhar and Alfred training in the yard. She feels like a stranger, but she can't take her eyes off what's happening. In despair, she wonders why she continues to watch them. Maria herself does not understand why she cannot simply leave everything as it is. Her curiosity gets the better of her, and she admits that she wanted to make sure Alfred was okay. Despite her doubts, she still worries about the boy. Alfred, a young man with a kind expression, is having doubts. He is thinking that learning to wield a sword might lead to him harming other people. His words are filled with regret and uncertainty. A small toy kitten sits on the ground as if listening to his words. Alfred continues his thoughts, feeling that causing harm is wrong. The setting highlights his internal struggle. Zakhar, a stern man with a cold gaze, calls out to Alfred, making him flinch. His voice sounds demanding, as if he is trying to force the boy out of his thoughts. Alfred reluctantly rises from the ground, but his movements are slow and hesitant. Zakhar, towering over him, points out that he is too slow in getting ready, which makes the young man even more tense. Zakhar demands that Alfred begin training immediately. His tone is strict, without a drop of patience, which emphasizes the difference in the characters of the heroes and their attitude to the situation. Alfred gently strokes the stuffed kitten, as if asking for support or comfort. The moment is touching in the otherwise tense atmosphere. Gathering his strength, Alfred begins training with a wooden sword. His face becomes focused, His movements are sharp, but they convey a sincere desire to cope with the task at hand. Zakar watches him from a distance. His gaze is stern, but there is a hint of approval in it. He urges Alfred on, demanding that he execute his blows faster and more accurately. The young man begins to lose strength. He stumbles, but despite his fatigue, he clutches the sword in his hands, ready to continue. His gaze shows tenacity and a desire not to fail. Zakar, with a stern expression on his face, gives a short word of encouragement. He makes it clear that Alfred must move forward despite his fear and doubts, because only then will he become stronger. On the training field, Zakar teaches little Alfred how to wield a sword. The Duke comments on the boy's technique in a reserved manner, urging him to move faster. Despite his efforts, Alfred is having difficulty and is clearly exhausted. Tired from the hard training, the boy falls to his knees. His face is red from the strain, and his breathing is heavy. Zakar, without showing a drop of sympathy, demands more diligence and perseverance from him. Zakar stands over Alfred, looking down intently. The boy, raising his head, catches his stern gaze. In a soft voice full of regret, Alfred apologizes for his weakness, trying to pull himself together. Maria watches the situation from afar. Her face expresses anxiety, and she mentally condemns the Duke's harshness. It hurts her to see how Alfred is trying with all his might to live up to expectations. Her patience fails, and she rushes towards the boy. The scene that has developed causes her suffering, making her heart literally squeeze with emotion. Running up to Zakar and Alfred, Maria challenges the Duke. She points to the boy's wounds, insisting that they stop their lessons and take care of his condition. Zakar remains calm and tells Maria directly that she should express her thoughts clearly if she disagrees. His tone is stern, but not aggressive. Maria clenches her fist in helplessness. She understands that she cannot explain what she feels in words. Her anger and helplessness find expression only in the tension of her body. The Duke, noticing her reaction, realizes that their conversation has gone beyond a simple training session. He looks thoughtfully at Maria but says nothing, leaving the situation tense. Little Alfred looks at the adults, feeling guilty for their argument. His eyes are full of regret and a desire to show that he can overcome weakness. A sudden flashback takes Maria into the past. She realizes that she has become the complete opposite of her former self, strong and strong-willed, protecting the weak. The boy gently tugs at her dress, forcing her to stop. His innocent gesture and the quiet word, "wait," awaken warmth and motherly care in Maria. Alfred, addressing Maria for the first time, asks if she has really lost the ability to speak. His tone betrays genuine doubt and surprise. Maria is shocked by his words, her internal monologue revealing a growing sense of anxiety. She does not understand why the boy evokes strange, familiar feelings in her. Zakar looks at the boy and Maria with growing suspicion. His emotions and tense gaze clearly indicate sudden guesses. Zakar is internally shaken. He probably makes a conclusion that radically changes the perception of the situation, linking all three in a still unclear but dramatic secret. Maria and Zakar discuss her strange behavior. Zakar, waving his arms, tries to understand the motives of her strike, asking pointed questions. He is clearly concerned about her silence and the tense atmosphere that surrounds them. Zakar is confused by her behavior. He wonders if Maria really doesn't understand why he is so worried. His gaze is full of tension, and his thoughts are full of bewilderment and anger, which increases the drama of the moment. Zakar remembers how Maria communicated calmly just yesterday. He looks for an explanation with irritation, but helplessness slips into his voice. Melio, the Duke's loyal assistant, appears in the background of their dialogue. Melio politely explains that doctors cannot determine the cause of Maria's muteness. Zakar does not hide his distrust, but Melio remains calm and adds that he is ready to help in any situation, demonstrating sincerity and devotion. Melio introduces himself to Maria with a smile. He says that their meeting is the first, but emphasizes his willingness to be helpful. His goodwill inspires confidence, even in such a difficult situation. Maria notes Melio's thoughtfulness when he offers her paper and pen so she can write down her thoughts. This gesture shows his concern for her comfort and maintains an atmosphere of mutual understanding. Maria takes a piece of paper and writes down that she has suddenly lost her voice, and the reasons remain a mystery. She tries to appear calm, but her gaze betrays hidden anxiety about what is happening. Maria's inner thoughts reveal her secret. She cannot admit to Zakar that she has reincarnated into his wife's body. Her experiences increase the tension of the plot, adding a mystical mystery. In the note, Maria apologizes for the inconvenience and promises to make an effort not to disturb others. Her determination to keep the secret underlines her resilience in this dramatic situation. The story ends on a disturbing note. A strange but deep connection is established between the three heroes, in which secrets, unspoken words, and a desire to understand each other are hidden. Maria holds the letter and looks at Zakar, who expresses doubt about her intentions. She decides to emphasize that she will not interfere with Alfred's upbringing, but there is a hidden determination in her eyes. Maria reflects on Alfred's past. She worries that the reason for his rejection could not only be Zakar's strict discipline, but also her own mistakes. This thought increases her guilt. In a vision, Maria sees a ruined palace in flames. Alfred, chained in the darkness of his emotions, becomes an instrument of death, which creates a sense of inevitability of tragedy. The painting shows Maria and Alfred lying on the ground, as if bound by a common fate. Despite Alfred's pain and cruelty, she is determined to find a way to save them both. Memories return to a tense dialogue between Maria and Zakar. He reproaches her for the problems she caused and calls on her not to interfere anymore, demonstrating his strict nature. However, Maria, smiling, remains firm. In her head, thoughts are ringing that she can become the key to salvation, despite all the obstacles that Zakar puts before her. Zakar leaves, but Maria resolutely declares that only she can save them all. Her confidence is emphasized by her determined look, despite the pressure of the surrounding circumstances. Alfred, in turn, undergoes his training. Zakar announces the end of the training, hoping that the boy will be able to overcome his weakness and laziness, showing his care in a strict manner. Alfred looks at Maria with a hint of embarrassment, as if trying to live up to her expectations. This moment highlights his internal struggle and desire to live up to her expectations. In the finale, Maria once again demonstrates her resilience and determination. Her goal is to save them all from the inevitable catastrophe, and she is ready to fight to the end, despite all the difficulties. Zakar, full of suspicion, frowns, looking at Melio. His question sounds sharp and commanding. Why did he fall silent, and what was he planning? The Duke's anxiety is felt in every word, and his gaze is piercing, as if seeing through his subordinate's intentions. Melio remains calm as he offers the Duke proof of his competence. The mention of his doctor's certificate sounds like an attempt to remove doubt, but there is an underlying tension in his voice. Zakar ponders about a girl with a bad reputation, known as a villain. His suspicions grow stronger, and he sternly orders Melio to keep an eye on her, realizing that such a threat cannot be missed. Melio accepts the order with impeccable loyalty. His confidence is reflected in the oath gesture and the firm gaze. The determination to carry out the order emphasizes his readiness to act even in the most difficult circumstances. Duke Zakar, sitting at the table, is thinking hard. His gaze is stern and focused. It seems that even at home he cannot completely relax, thinking about his duties or personal concerns. In the throne room, the majestic king sits on his throne and discusses marriage. His image is filled with grandeur and mystery. Perhaps he is concerned about the political consequences of his decisions. Young Alfred Brown sits alone in a luxurious room, hugging a toy, clearly feeling vulnerable. He feels like he doesn't belong in this world of luxury and loneliness. The maid brings a tray of treats to Alfred with a smile, trying to comfort him. Her kindness and concern create a warm atmosphere in the cold and strict surroundings of the castle. Alfred, frightened by something, cries out. The maid anxiously asks if he is hurt. Her concern shows her genuine concern for the boy. Hearing his answer, the maid hurries to call a doctor. She resolutely leaves the room, leaving Alfred alone, but her intentions are sincere and she strives to help him. Alfred hugs the toy, pouring out his feelings. His desire to be with his mother expresses a longing for the warmth and care that he so lacks in this world. The boy decides to run away, filled with a desire to find freedom and escape from the burden he feels within the palace walls. His determination grows with every word. Suddenly, he is tormented by doubts and thinks of staying. The tears and pain in his eyes convey the struggle between the desire for freedom and the fear of the unknown. In the end, he thinks of his mother again, realizing that his only desire is to be with her. This thought brings comfort to the boy, despite all his internal struggle. Alfred Brown, a small boy with soft brown hair, looks ahead with surprise and fear, clutching a stuffed cat. He is clearly uncomfortable and is overcome with feelings of confusion and bewilderment. Maria, an elegant girl with snow-white hair, enters the room holding a medical bag in her hands. Her appearance brings a contrast of calm and confidence, despite Alfred's surprise at her arrival. Alfred stumbles and falls, trying to prove that everything is okay, although he is barely holding back tears. His courage is noticeable, but it is obvious that he needs help. He shows that he is ready to cope on his own. Maria crouches down next to Alfred, trying to calm him down. Her gaze expresses concern. She decisively takes the situation into her own hands, checking whether the boy's injury is too serious. She notices that the wound looks painful and decides to start treating it immediately. There is a firmness and confidence in her actions that helps Alfred relax a little. Alfred, frightened and stubborn, resists the treatment. He is categorically against it, but Maria finds a way to convince him that it is necessary and will take very little time. With all her kindness, Maria carefully treats the wound despite Alfred's protests. Her calm voice and gentle actions allow the boy to overcome his fear. After completing the disinfection, Maria applies a bandage. Her soft smile and confident movements inspire confidence in Alfred. He begins to feel safe next to her. Maria looks at Alfred with a little pride. Her thoughts show how she appreciates his efforts and notes his courage. Despite his young age, he shows restraint. Alfred feels her care and love, which gives him a special feeling of warmth. He realizes that these moments create a connection that fills his heart with gratitude and peace. Maria, with a sad look, tells Alfredo about the need to fight through hardships while growing up. Her determination underlines her desire to help him become strong, despite the pain hidden behind her words. Alfred smiles, embarrassed, expressing joy at the attention. His soft laughter reflects his genuine happiness, which he has rarely experienced before, especially in the midst of Maria's warmth and care. Maria notices Alfred's unusually happy expression and feels surprised. Her thoughts emphasize how rarely she has seen him so happy, which touches her heart and makes her smile. Alfred suddenly becomes embarrassed when he realizes that Maria has noticed his joy. His thoughts are filled with anxiety. He worries that he might seem strange to her, and his indecision becomes obvious. Maria finds Alfred funny, which creates a warm atmosphere. She helps him with his injury, showing concern, which strengthens their bond. Their interactions become more and more sincere. Alfred, surprised to be called funny, recalls previous hurtful words from others. For him, this is a rare moment when his individuality is recognized as positive, which awakens a new emotion in him. In Alfred's memories, children rejected him, considering him boring. This hurt his soul, increasing his fear of being misunderstood. These memories contrast with Maria's real care. For the first time, Alfred feels the word funny fill him with joy rather than ridicule. He begins to rethink how others see him, thanks to Maria's sincerity. Maria finishes caring for Alfred, smiling and assuring him that everything is okay. Her warmth creates a space for him to feel safe and loved. Alfred understands that his path is still long. Training will continue. However, he sees in this a chance to become stronger, thanks to the support of Maria, who believes in him. Maria wondered what she could do to help Alfred Brown. A young boy with a sincere look in his eyes, she was looking for a way to be useful and wondered if she had done enough for him. Alfred, a little shy, was about to express his thoughts. He looked at Maria with excitement, trying to find the words to express what was so important to him. He gathered his courage and firmly stated that he was a good man and was ready to make every effort to justify the trust. There was determination in his eyes and sincerity in his voice. Surprised, Maria looked at the boy attentively. His words awakened in her respect and faith that he was capable of much, despite his young age. She decided it was time to go home now, but her thoughts were occupied with Alfred. She felt that their conversation had changed something in their relationship. Alfred looked at Maria with a slight sadness, wondering why she was leaving already. He didn't want their moment of communication to end so quickly. Touched by his sincerity, Maria could not contain her emotions. She admired his sincere desire to be better and received his words with warmth. Alfred, slightly embarrassed, thanked her for her help. He felt grateful that Maria believed in him and supported his sincere intentions. Sitting on the floor with the toy in his hands, he thought about how much Maria had surprised him with her kindness. He realized how important her support was to him. His thoughts were full of warmth and gratitude. Remembering how Maria had proven herself, he felt inspired to become better and do everything to live up to her expectations. Maria thought about how her actions were being judged unfairly, wondering if she was an evil person. The environment around her was filled with light shades, emphasizing her inner confusion. Little Alfred hugs the toy tenderly, surprised at what Maria really is. His gaze expresses mixed feelings, bewilderment and a desire to understand her better. Zakar looks at his subordinate with slight severity, trying to figure out what he wants to convey. His posture indicates confidence and readiness for a conversation that promises to be serious. Malio watches the scene carefully, expressing thoughtfulness. His gaze is directed forward, creating the impression that he is trying to assess what is happening from two sides. Malio notices that Maria and Alfredo's relationship is becoming warmer. He watches them with restraint, realizing that they are starting to get along and find common ground. Alfred smiles genuinely, which is rare, according to observers. His joy is genuine, and it brings a sense of harmony to their family atmosphere. Malio laughs to himself, noticing the similarities between Alfred and his father. The moment adds lightness and humor to the serious situation, showing how little things can bring people together. Malio is happy that Maria and Alfred have become friends, seeing this as a great progress. His face lights up with kindness, emphasizing his support for the changes that are taking place. Zakar warns that no one should underestimate Maria, emphasizing her strength and importance. His voice sounds confident, reflecting respect for her character and capabilities. Malio mentions Maria's past, speaking of her former fame as a young lady. This moment reveals her backstory, adding depth to her character and creating intrigue. At the ball, the attention of those gathered is riveted on Maria, who stands out for her modesty and grace. Envious ladies mock her, trying to show her in an unfavorable light, but this only strengthens her inner strength. Zakar's small figure, as if outlined by ironic thoughts, reminds us that their marriage is not just a union, but a political step. Maria's house is under close surveillance, and she understands the seriousness of the situation. A stately mansion with a gloomy sky heightens the tension. Maria is from the house of the Marquis of Darna, but her origins become a cause for suspicion. Her family finds itself at the center of intrigues connected with the royal court. The king is convinced that the recent uprising in the area is inspired by Mary's family. Confirmation of this is sought among her entourage. Security forces clash with the rebels, increasing the atmosphere of anxiety. Zakar realizes that Maria is submitting to the demands, maintaining an outward submissiveness, but he views her silence as part of a complex game in which both sides carefully conceal their true intentions. Lunch at a richly laid table turns into a symbolic field of tension. Maria tries to appear calm, enjoying the sight of exquisite dishes, but her thoughts are clearly preoccupied with important decisions. Maria waits for Alfred, likely an important ally or figure in the intrigue, to appear at dinner. She makes a plan of action based on new opportunities for maneuver. An unpleasant surprise. Zakar is nearby again. His presence irritates Maria, but she understands that now is not the time for emotions because the future of her family depends on her behavior. Zakar's gaze becomes more intent. Maria tries to remain confident, convincing herself that she needs to be prudent and not make hasty moves, despite the tense relationship. Maria looks at the wine, wishing to lose herself in its taste for a moment. Zakar, on the contrary, keeps his cool, clearly enjoying the situation where every gesture says more than words. Zakar, holding a glass of red wine, invites Maria to join him. His confident look and manner of communication emphasize that he feels like the master of the situation, and the offer sounds like a subtle gesture of attention. Maria happily accepts Zakhar's care, sincerely admiring his manners. Her face lights up with a grateful smile, and the surrounding atmosphere of the dinner becomes warmer and friendlier. Bringing the glass to her lips, Maria enjoys the rich aroma of the wine. She mentally compares it to drinks from her world and admits that the taste of this wine far exceeds her expectations. Zakhar, observing Maria, cannot help but notice the changes in her behavior. It seems to him that after the wedding she became different, more confident and decisive, which surprises him. Zakhar suddenly remembers that Maria is not allowed to drink alcohol. His calmness gives way to concern, and he begins to look for an explanation for her unexpected confidence. Maria, noticing the change in Zakhar's mood, begins to worry. She understands that her behavior may arouse suspicion and tries not to reveal her inner experiences. Zakhar's thoughts begin to gain clarity. He tries to figure out what is going on, and even admits the idea that Maria could be hiding something important, perhaps connected to her past. The tension grows, and Zakhar decides that the changes in Maria are not accidental. He wonders if she might be hiding a second personality or a secret that is changing her character. Maria realizes her mistake, remembering that her body is not supposed to consume alcohol. Panic takes over her mind, but she tries to maintain an outward confidence so as not to give herself away. Zakhar stares at Maria, lost in his thoughts. His insistent gaze makes her nervous, but she understands that she must be extremely careful not to reveal her secrets. Maria watches the mysterious black figures in the air, puzzled as if they were the embodiment of her thoughts. They seem absurd and strange. She holds a glass of wine, trying to understand what is happening around her. Zakhar discusses people with split personalities, pondering how their tastes and preferences can change depending on which personality is dominant at the moment. His gaze becomes focused. He reflects on Maria's recent actions, which seemed strange and inconsistent to him, trying to find an explanation for her behavior. Maria, worried about her situation, mentally thanks fate for saving her from an awkward situation. She tensely watches Zakhar's reaction, who seems puzzled by her words. Reflecting sarcastically, she notes that he doesn't even realize that he is now facing another person in his wife's body. Her reasoning is full of hidden anxiety and irony. Maria admits to herself that despite knowing all the details of the affair she finds herself in, her own fate remains unclear. She understands the importance of being vigilant so as not to give away her secret. Zakhar puts his hand on the table, his gaze tense. He is ready to find out the truth that torments his thoughts and strives to get answers to his suspicions. Zakhar accuses Maria of lying, claiming that her behavior is completely contrary to her previous image, which increases his distrust. He approaches Maria, his eyes a mixture of doubt and determination, his movements a readiness to expose what seems obvious to him. Zakhar looks straight into her eyes, asking if she has been replaced by someone. His suspicions reach their peak, causing Maria to cringe internally, but she resolutely keeps herself in check. Zakhar looks at Maria appraisingly, thinking that her fear will make her speak. His gaze is full of tension, but to his surprise, she remains silent, and he is disappointed by her reaction. Zakhar makes it clear with cold determination that his patience is running out. His stern tone and threat sound convincing, increasing the tension between them. Maria, despite her obvious fear, tries to resist. She resolutely holds the knife, preparing to defend herself, and questions Zakhar's intentions, sensing his suspicions. Zakhar warns that any mistakes or lies she makes will lead to fatal consequences. His words sound like her last chance to prove her sincerity. Maria remains tense, her fear intensifying when Zakhar categorically states that he will kill her if she betrays him. She realizes the seriousness of his intentions. Zakhar emphasizes Maria's caution. His cold actions increase her nervousness. He reminds her that their relationship is on the edge, and any mistakes are unacceptable. Maria experiences inner horror from Zakhar's words, realizing that her life is in danger. She begins to doubt her future and her ability to resist the Duke. Her anxiety turns into panic. She is afraid that if the situation does not change, Zakhar will finally break her. Thoughts about past events that led to this marriage arise in her head. Maria remembers how she was forced to marry him. Her thoughts are full of bitterness and despair. She feels cornered with no way out. Her memories are heightened when she realizes she was chosen because of her family, suspected of rebellion. She realizes she is being used for surveillance, and her fate depends on Zakar. Maria feels like a prisoner, as she is suspected. She worries and touches her forehead in an attempt to collect her thoughts, realizing her vulnerability in the current situation. Her dark thoughts are intensified by anxiety. Maria suffers from a severe headache, her body weakens, and she can barely stand on her feet. Her strength leaves her, and she falls to the floor, internally complaining about her condition and her inability to cope with the situation. Maria lies down, but suddenly her attention is drawn to Alfred, who shyly peeks out from behind the door. His innocent look seems unexpected, and Maria wonders why he is here. Alfred greets Maria with a timid wave. His sincere expression brings her relief. She smiles, thinking about how his presence brings her a little peace in this chaos. Maria still can't believe that this child could pose a threat to her. She tries to maintain a friendly attitude, but her thoughts are filled with questions about his true intentions. However, Maria switches to a new problem. Remembering Zakar, she decides to avoid him, realizing that his coldness and persistence represent a real danger to her peace of mind. Having said goodbye to her anxious thoughts, Maria gently calls Alfred to her. She hopes that his trusting behavior will hide from her at least some of the troubles associated with her current situation. Alfred suddenly runs away, leaving Maria puzzled. She wonders why he came at all if he ended up disappearing so quickly. This increases her curiosity and slight confusion. Maria spots Alfred nearby, where he reappears clutching something important to him. She watches his actions in surprise, trying to understand his motives. Alfred, clearly embarrassed, approaches Maria. She looks at him with a question in her eyes, waiting for him to finally open up to her about his thoughts and explain why he came back. Alfred Brown, holding a stuffed animal tightly in his hands, restraining his emotions, wishes good night. His gaze reflects tenderness and uncertainty, and the gift symbolizes his desire to establish contact. Maria is surprised by his sudden visit. Her expression turns to soft thoughtfulness as she asks what brings him to her. The question awakens genuine curiosity in her. Hearing that Alfred simply wanted to say goodnight, Maria feels a warm wave of affection. Her heart is filled with a touching feeling from his sincerity. Alfred is happy that he was able to express his feelings. He hugs the toy, beaming with happiness. This moment reveals his childish spontaneity and desire to be understood. Maria, watching him, begins to wonder if he has become more than just an acquaintance for her. The question of what is changing between them causes slight confusion. She realizes that Alfred often acts impulsively, without understanding how his behavior affects those around him. This thought leaves her with a mixture of frustration and sympathy. Maria decides to analyze her feelings. Lying in bed, she thinks about how his actions can change their relationship. Her thoughts flow calmly, like a warm evening breeze. Looking back, she realizes that she was sometimes too hard on people. Her tendency to ask a lot of questions could make others uncomfortable. She begins to question whether it was ever right to be so demanding. This moment of self-reflection forces her to look at herself from the outside. Losing herself in thought, Maria comes to the conclusion that she needs to learn to be softer. She wants to become a person who can truly hear and understand others. Maria wakes up in a luxurious bedroom, not immediately understanding what has happened. Her gaze stops at the sunlight illuminating the palace and garden. She realizes that she fell asleep before she realized how tired she was. Feeling uneasy, she jumps up from her bed. Panic overwhelms her, but her thoughts focus on the feeling that something unusual is happening, as if she has missed an important detail. Maria recalls her thoughts. She always thought that she could handle any situation on her own. But this time, the anxiety in her head intensifies, and she understands that the situation is getting out of control. The awareness of danger suddenly overwhelms her. A clear thought of threat flashes through her mind, and the tension in the room becomes palpable, as if something is actually happening. Alfred, a boy with kind but wary eyes, peers through the door. His gaze betrays concern, but he doesn't understand what exactly is happening, only silently observing her reaction. Maria's thoughts become chaotic when she sees a mouse running across the floor in front of her. She realizes that her fears have begun to manifest into concrete things that seem to have no meaning. Maria, unable to contain her emotions, screams and lifts her leg to avoid contact with the rodent. Panic takes hold of her, but she tries to cope with this fear. She sees a mouse gnawing at her pen. With desperation in her voice, she wants to stop it, mentally persuading the rodent to stop its actions. This moment seems absurd to her, but frightening. The mouse runs out of the room, leaving her confused. Maria, raising her hand, calls for help, although she understands that the danger is not that great. Her voice sounds loud, but trembles with emotion. She sees the mouse stop at the door, as if mocking her. It seems to her that the rodent is deliberately blocking her way, preventing her from getting out and calling for help, turning a small problem into a huge ordeal. Alfred, a shy guy with golden eyes, cautiously peeks out from behind the door, noticing a worried Maria. She is clearly worried, her gaze is intense, and an uneasy atmosphere fills the room. Maria suddenly calls out to Alfred in alarm, warning him of danger. Her voice is filled with fear, and her gaze is filled with a sincere request for help. Alfred is puzzled, but is determined to understand what is happening. Not expecting such a sharp morning, Alfred tries to greet Maria, who is rushing with a stream of emotions in a friendly manner. His good nature and calmness contrast with her agitated behavior. Maria points at something in panic, frozen in fear. Alfred, watching her gestures with gentle surprise, slowly moves towards where she says the threat is hiding. Maria screams in a trembling voice that there is a mouse somewhere nearby. Her fear seems exaggerated, but Alfred cannot blame her and remains calm, although he does not understand the scale of her panic. Maria realizes that Alfred does not share her fear, and this increases her sense of hopelessness. She clenches her fists, trying to somehow explain her point of view. Alfred sits down next to her, trying to understand the cause of the commotion. His gaze remains soft, and his tone is caring. He listens to her, holding a stuffed kitten in his hands. After pointing the way, Maria asks Alfred to handle the situation. Her face expresses hope that he will be able to find a solution, despite the apparent simplicity of the problem. Maria explains how much she fears mice, calling them horrible and scary creatures. Alfred remains calm, seeing how her emotions are overwhelming her. Smiling, Alfred remarks that he finds the mice cute and offers a solution. His positive attitude and friendliness calm Maria down, bringing the morning's incident to an end. Maria was scared, but Alfred confidently took the initiative into his own hands, assuring her that he could handle the situation. His confidence warmed the atmosphere, and his small protective gesture instilled calm in her. The little gray mouse that had caused the disturbance ran boldly towards Alfred's outstretched hand. His soft voice persuaded the animal not to frighten the people around him, creating an almost fairy tale bond between the boy and the mouse. Alfred, holding the mouse carefully in his hands, gently coaxed it to go away without disturbing Miss Maria. His caring and friendly attitude created a feeling of warmth and comfort in the room. Watching Alfred, Maria was surprised by his courage and determination. She was touched that this little hero was not afraid to take the animal in his hands for her peace of mind. The boy happily announced that everything was settled, smiling a wide, sincere smile. His carefree, good-natured manner filled the room with lightness, dispelling the last of the fear. Maria looked at Alfred with gratitude, sincerely expressing her appreciation. Her emotions were conveyed through facial expressions and gestures, making the moment very touching. Thinking about how to express her thoughts, Maria was looking for a way to thank Alfred. Her gentleness and caring were visible in her every movement. She decided to write the word "thank you," showing how much this gesture meant to her. Her eyes shone with genuine joy and gratitude, emphasizing her sincerity. Alfred, seeing her reaction, laughed, showing his joy and pleasure at the situation. His smile lit up the room, filling it with a cheerful and light atmosphere. Maria suggested that Alfred should not hesitate to ask her for help if he ever needed support. This moment marked the beginning of their special friendship. Alfred, looking thoughtfully ahead, reflects on the importance of helping each other. His quiet voice reflects sincerity and touches the heart as he realizes how people should support each other. He is engrossed in reading a book with illustrations showing friendship between different characters. Looking at the pages, Alfred understands that true friendship is revealed in trouble. Inspired by what he read, Alfred happily shares his idea that helping is what makes friends friends. His eyes sparkle when he asks about friendship. Maria, hearing Alfred's words, is surprised by the sincerity of his words. She is stunned by the depth of his simple but so correct reasoning. Their conversation takes an unexpected turn when Alfred confidently states that they are now friends. He expresses his joy with such emotion that it makes Maria smile. Maria notices that their relationship is developing rapidly. Her gaze is full of thought, but she admits that this is a step towards preventing danger. Maria gradually agrees with Alfred and warmly confirms that they have truly become friends. Her joyful face shines with confidence. Alfred is overcome with emotion and expresses his joy sincerely. His mischievous face lights up as if he has found something incredibly valuable. With this revelation, a touching moment of mutual understanding arises between them. They rejoice at the new steps in their friendship and are grateful for these moments. Alfred, suddenly remembering something important, exclaims enthusiastically. A new interest can be seen in his eyes, hinting at further developments. Little Alfred Brown approaches Maria with excitement, asking for help. His face is serious, and his voice is filled with desperation as he tries to explain to her how much he needs her support. Alfred admits that he is not very good at tag because he is always caught first. He tells this sadly, showing how his clumsiness makes him feel insecure. He remembers how he kept falling while trying to catch up with other kids. These failures made him lose faith in himself. But inside he still had a burning desire to become better. Alfred's determination grows as he declares that he wants to learn to run faster. His eyes are full of enthusiasm, and his tone shows that he is ready to work for his dream. Maria is surprised that Alfred thinks she is fast. He remembers how she once came running to him like lightning during their fencing practice. Her speed inspired him to seek her help. Trying to remember that moment, Maria realizes that she really does have good physical skills. Her self-confidence grows, and she feels a responsibility to help Alfred. Maria assures Alfred that she is ready to take on his training. She is confident that she can help him become agile, and her energetic attitude begins to charge the boy with motivation. Enthusiastically, Maria asks Alfred to show her how he runs now. This creates an atmosphere of trust between them, strengthening Alfred's determination to prove his willingness to work on himself. Alfred feels Maria's support and begins to believe that with her help he can change himself. Her words fill him with confidence, and their common goal begins to seem real. The inspirational inscription on the piece of paper in Maria's hands symbolizes her intention to help Alfred achieve success. She is ready to guide him so that he becomes stronger and more confident. Alfred Brown, a boy with a determined expression, strides confidently forward despite his clumsiness. Maria, with white hair, watches him, noticing how slowly he moves and anticipating the difficulties of learning. Maria realizes that even on foot, she can move faster than Alfred can run, and reflects on how difficult it will be to make progress. Her mixed feelings are reflected in the thoughtful look in her eyes and the waves of energy around her. Alfred, clenching his teeth despite his fatigue, shows seriousness of intent. His determined expression impresses Maria, but she understands that he has a long way to go to reach the desired level. Alfred's awkward step turns into a fall. Maria is overcome with surprise and concern. Her reaction is filled with excitement as she rushes to assess his condition. Alfred, sitting on the ground, is slightly embarrassed, but his resolve remains unshaken. Maria makes sure he is unharmed and, despite all the difficulties, encourages him to continue. Looking at Alfred, Maria sees quiet determination and gentle disappointment in his eyes. She knows his efforts are sincere, and he needs more practice to do better. Maria decides to step up her training. A fire lights up in her eyes, and she realizes that there is no turning back. Her energy and determination inspire confidence that she can handle the task. After drawing up a training plan, Maria suggests Alfredo do exercises to strengthen his arms, legs, and endurance. Her stern look and calm tone make it clear that she is serious. Alfred, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of work ahead, looks confused. His mind is in chaos with the thought that he might not be able to cope with the task at hand. Panic grips him, but determination breaks through the doubts. Alfred is worried about whether he can do all this. His eyes reflect fear and uncertainty, but deep inside he hopes that he will find a way to overcome the difficulties and prove his strength. Melio tells Zakar that Maria and Alfred are training together. The Duke listens to this information with interest, his expression hinting at suspicion. It seems he is trying to understand what drives the girl and what her plans are. Zakar is thinking hard about what exactly Maria is planning. His gaze becomes cold and focused. It seems the Duke is not ready to leave her actions unnoticed, intending to find out everything personally. Zakar resolutely takes matters into his own hands. His gestures show inner determination and leadership qualities. He intends to check the situation himself in order to understand Maria's true intentions. Alfred catches up with Maria on the stairs, choking with emotion. He calls out to her, asking her to stop. His voice trembles with fatigue, but his eyes show his determination not to miss an important conversation. Alfred loses his balance and starts to fall down the stairs. His face is frozen in fear. He reaches out his hand, hoping to find support. Maria notices what is happening and reacts quickly. Maria tries to grab Alfred, but the distance between them is too great. The situation seems hopeless. The tension increases. In her eyes, horror and a desperate attempt to help are read. Zakar catches the falling Alfred, holding him at the last moment. The boy ends up in his safe hands, and the Duke's face reflects calm mixed with relief. Alfred, realizing who saved him, looks at Zakar with surprise and gratitude. The Duke remains unperturbed despite what happened. His actions leave a deep impression on the boy. Maria sighs in relief as she reflects on the accident that was avoided. Her delicate face expresses both fatigue and relief. However, the tension in her eyes reveals that recent events have left their mark on her soul. Zakar, overcome with anger, directs harsh words at Maria, accusing her of pushing Alfred into danger. His face flares with indignation, and he demands an explanation, increasing the atmosphere of tension. Alfred bravely stands up for Mary despite her confusion. He is convinced that she is innocent and does not allow the Duke to continue to blame her. His determination is reflected in every word, spoken with genuine concern. Zakar, in a restrained but authoritative tone, declares that Maria should not approach Alfred. His voice sounds like a final verdict, leaving the girl stunned and devastated. Maria, acutely feeling the injustice of the situation, tries to justify her actions. She remembers that she never wanted to harm Alfred and is inwardly indignant at the imposed accusations. She explains desperately that she was simply trying to help Alfred, with all the strength she had, her voice shaking with emotion, her eyes reflecting a mixture of pain and determination to prove she was right. Tired and confused, Maria gives in to her emotions, ending her thoughts in a raised voice. Her hands are clenched and her face is flushed with indignation, but she feels that her words are powerless. Following this, Maria withdraws into herself. She looks sullenly at her glass of wine, internally cursing the circumstances. Her face expresses disappointment, and her shoulders sag under the weight of the thought of injustice. Her reflections lead her to the conclusion that despite all her efforts, the situation has remained unchanged. She sadly watches her reflection in the glass, realizing that she has lost the trust of those she wanted to protect. At this time, Zakar, confident in his rightness, continues to monitor the situation. He coldly reflects on how Maria violates boundaries, not taking into account Alfred's interests, and internally becomes convinced of his position. Alfred, holding a soft toy in his hands, looks at Zakar with delight, thinking that he looks like his father. Zakar, tall and stern, holds the boy's hand, demonstrating confidence and care in his posture. Maria, graceful and thoughtful, sits on a sofa in a luxurious living room, surrounded by golden decorations. The sound of footsteps outside the door catches her attention, causing a slight alarm to appear on her face. Alfred, peeking out from behind the door, addresses Maria, holding the toy in his hands. His gaze is full of curiosity and timid hope, as if he wants to offer something important or ask her advice. Maria closes her eyes for a moment, clearly lost in her thoughts. Alfred, noticing her agitation, asks what is wrong with her, demonstrating genuine concern and sensitivity surprising for his age. Maria apologizes to Alfred, expressing regret, and takes his hand. Her face is determined as she speaks of the importance of his training, as if considering her future steps. Alfred touchingly squeezes her hand, begging her to help him and promising to try his best. The bright, emotional atmosphere emphasizes his sincere desire to learn. Alfred looks at Maria with bright, determined eyes. He expresses his desire for her to teach him everything she knows, drawing a longing, warm smile from her. Her eyes glisten with tears of regret. She mentally apologizes to the boy, calling him by name, as if thinking of her debt or lost opportunities. Despite Maria's response, Alfred refuses to give in. His determined gaze and firm grip on the toy highlight his character and willingness to overcome difficulties. Maria is left alone, watching Alfred walk away. Her face expresses a mixture of sadness and pride, and the warm light of the room emphasizes her inner experiences. Maria stands, looking thoughtfully into the distance, tormented by doubts. She wonders if she has made the right decision. Her face reflects anxiety, as if something important and personal is at stake. Alfred, a boy with kind eyes, holds the toy as if seeking support. His desire to continue training conveys a determination that is not easily ignored. Zakhar, standing in a stern pose, expresses his disagreement. He is against Alfred continuing despite the child's wishes. His face is stern, as if every word is an order. Maria, struck by a sudden thought, reacts animatedly. Her gesture and facial expression speak of the solution she has found to change the situation. Maria comes into Zakhar's office. He is sitting behind a massive desk, and his subordinate, Melio, is standing next to him. Zakhar orders them in, his voice full of dignity. Maria appears in the doorway, dressed in an elegant dress. She holds a piece of paper firmly, showing that she has come with the intention of defending Alfred. Her determination knows no bounds. Maria's eyes are filled with determination as she explains that she has made a promise to Alfred. She wants to continue training and takes responsibility for the boy's safety upon herself. Maria offers a compromise. She asks for someone Zakhar trusts to accompany them during their classes. This shows how willing she is to find a solution for Alfred. Zakhar looks at her with anger. His face expresses emotions, from irritation to firmness. He emphasizes again that Maria should stay away from Alfred. Despite the refusal, Maria does not give up. Her resilience and persistence convey her determination to fulfill her promise to Alfred, even if she has to overcome many obstacles. Maria held a sheet of paper, her hand clenched, but her gaze remained calm. The girl's thoughts betrayed confidence in what was happening, as if she knew in advance what words she would hear and what he would have to answer. She remembered the moments with Alfred. Her kindness and sincerity touched his heart. An irresistible desire to make her dreams come true was born in him, because every expression on her face seemed priceless to him. Zakhar stared at the girl, his stern gaze as if trying to read Maria's intentions. The silence was filled with anticipation as the girl prepared to say something important. Alfred stepped forward, raised his hand decisively to attract the attention of those present. His words sounded confident, and all eyes immediately turned to him. At that moment, he was the center of attention. The boy asked to hear his story. He stood before the adults, radiating sincerity and confidence despite his young age. The atmosphere in the room began to change, filling with tension. Duke Zakhar remained coolly calm, challenging the boy to prove his words. However, his interest in the situation was obvious, and he followed the developments closely. Alfred sincerely stated that Maria was not to blame. She was only trying to help him when he found himself in a difficult situation. There was concern in his voice and a desire to protect her from injustice. The boy warmly reminded her that he and Maria were friends. He made it clear that he valued her support and trust, and that this connection meant a lot to him. This made an impression on everyone around him. Melio watched the proceedings with mild surprise. His gaze expressed bewilderment, but also growing interest in what the boy was going to say next. He listened attentively to every word. Alfred showed unusual fortitude for his age. His honesty and determination touched the hearts of those around him. It was a moment when he was able to show his strength and sincerity. A boy named Alfred Brown thinks about friends helping each other in difficult times. He runs down the alley, clearly inspired by his thoughts, with sincere determination in his eyes, ready to take action. Alfred remembers how he was eager to gain knowledge and learn a lot, but he was unable to do anything. It was at this moment that Maria was there, helping him to understand the difficulties. He understands how important support is and wants Maria to continue teaching him. Alfred remembers with awe and gratitude those moments when she shared her knowledge and experience. Maria offers a solution to a difficult situation, holding out a piece of paper with a proposal. She wants Alfred to be with someone who can be trusted to take care of his future. Duke Zakhar, sitting at his desk, ponders this thoughtfully. He tries to understand who among his entourage is capable of carrying out such a responsible task. Melio and Maria enter the office. Melio, as a loyal subordinate, shares his opinion, but causes Zakhar's displeasure. The Duke hesitates, but the decision seems to become clear. Suddenly, Alfred, with shining eyes and a joyful cry, addresses Zakhar, calling him Dad. The child's emotions stun the Duke, forcing him to think about his duties. Alfred states directly that he wants Zakhar to be near him. For the Duke, this becomes an unexpected and touching moment, awakening hidden feelings in him. Later, Zakhar reflects alone, wondering why he is doing all this. A mixture of doubt and determination appears on his face, hinting at an internal struggle. Alfred happily plays nearby, and Maria watches him with a smile. Zakhar decides that he has no time for nonsense, but perhaps his opinion will soon change. Alfred defends his position to Maria, showing determination in his actions. His words are filled with confidence. He strives to prove that his actions make sense. Maria's gaze is stern, but she listens, appreciating his persistence. During the discussion, Alfred remembers Maria's advice to him about balance. These thoughts fill his determination, and he understands that this is not just a training session, but part of an important lesson. Maria agrees with his reasoning, noting that the exercises will help strengthen the body and stabilize the core. She proudly reflects on the application of this technique even in her world. Maria's inner experiences are noticeable. She thinks that her words would have remained misunderstood anyway, but her confidence in the correctness of Alfred's actions is unshakable. Zakhar intervenes in the situation, discreetly reminding him of the importance of his own business. His stern tone emphasizes the distance between him and Alfred, showing that tension remains between them. Zakhar leaves, announcing that he is returning to work. His departure leaves Maria and Alfred space for further reflection and work on themselves. Alfred feels abandoned. He thinks that his father really hates him, sinking into dark thoughts. His small hands clench, showing tension and resentment. Maria notices Alfred's pain. Her gaze expresses sympathy. She reflects on how much Zakhar upset the boy with his actions, worrying about his condition. But Alfred gathers his strength. He asks Maria to continue her studies, albeit with a sad look. His expression shows that he is ready to overcome difficulties. Maria looks at him approvingly, admiring his resilience. Alfred once again feels the support that helps him build his confidence and move forward. A boy with disheveled hair, Alfred, runs down the path, dodging someone. His clumsy movements suggest a child's haste, and Maria, in a purple dress, watches from behind, looking thoughtfully after him. Maria stops and ponders her emotions. Her face reflects her inner doubts. Why is Zakhar so strict? She decides to leave it on his conscience, but a shadow of anxiety remains. Melio, looking seriously into the distance, ponders Alfred's feelings. He believes that the boy is especially vulnerable, and his thoughts are focused on how to protect the child from excessive severity. Maria pauses, inviting Alfred to rest. With a warm smile, she hands him a sheet of paper, and the boy, slightly calmer, looks up at her. Her concern brings him relief. They settle down for a picnic. Alfred, sitting cross-legged, is a little withdrawn, but seems calm next to Maria. Melio, smiling, offers to pour tea for everyone, trying to diffuse the situation. Melio, holding the teapot, politely offers Maria tea, trying to create a cozy atmosphere. Maria thanks him, slightly relaxing. The pleasant aroma of tea wafts through the air, to which Alfred reacts with curiosity. Melio, holding the teapot, looks at it with interest and wonders what it contains. His thoughtful look makes everyone wary, and the intrigue around the drink intensifies. Maria's face changes abruptly. She looks puzzled and worried. Something in the teapot causes her great confusion, and her thoughts become confused, increasing the tension of the scene. Melio notices her paleness and asks worriedly if the tea has caused any discomfort. Maria tries to pull herself together, but her condition becomes the central topic of concern for everyone. Maria, in a panic, refuses to drink tea, obviously fearing a trick. Alfred, noticing her reaction, tries to understand what is happening. At this time, a calm Malio is seen next to Maria, holding a teapot, as if nothing had happened. Alfred, looking into the cup, ponders its contents with curiosity. He notices an unusual smell and assumes it is rosemary. The guy looks confident, explaining that this tea helps get rid of fatigue. Maria is frightened by the fact that she made the tea herself, not the maid. She is afraid that Malio will immediately accuse her of something wrong if he finds out about it. Fear makes her cautious. Alfred, sitting with a cup, calmly explains that the smell of tea is due to rosemary. He finds it completely natural and does not attach any special significance to it. Malio listens attentively, but is still perplexed. Maria looks at Alfred in surprise, not understanding how he figured out the situation so quickly. Her thoughts are full of questions. Is he really that attentive and has a developed sense of smell? Malio asks incredulously if it is really rosemary, trying to confirm his guess. He clearly wants to understand if Alfred is mistaken. The mood in the room remains tense. Suddenly, Malio smiles and compliments Maria on her knowledge of tea, noting with surprise that he did not expect such competence. His good-natured expression relieves some of the tension. A teapot with a hot drink fills a cup, creating an atmosphere of coziness. Alfred confidently claims that this tea will really help restore strength and relieve fatigue. Everything looks almost idyllic. Maria thanks him for his help while wondering to herself how Alfred figured out about the rosemary. She feels relieved and satisfied that the situation is being resolved without problems and unnecessary accusations. Maria, still incredulous, thinks about Alfred's unusual abilities. She wonders if his sense of smell is really so acute that he could identify rosemary with a single sniff. Alfred delightedly tells that the maid did not prepare the tea and that Maria brought him the drink to help him cope with his fatigue. He is perplexed and tries to understand whether the maid told him the truth or whether it was a lie. Alfred sits on the grass with a serious look, his heart beating faster. He suspects that Maria may have deceived him. His thoughts are full of doubts, and he cannot immediately understand what is happening. Maria stares into space, lost in thought. She muses that there is no magic in their world, trying to convince herself that magic is impossible. However, something about the situation makes her slightly uneasy. Alfred, having calmed down a bit, decides to stop worrying. His face lights up with relief. It's as if he convinces himself that it's not worth paying any more attention to this and just enjoys the moment. Maria remembers that the invitation to the ball came in advance, and they were informed about the upcoming event. She examines the dress, thinking about her role in this evening and what lies ahead. She admits to herself that she has never been to a ball before. It makes her nervous and unsure. Her heart beats faster, and she worries about how this important evening will go. Maria looks gorgeous in her elegant red dress with floral embellishments, but fear grows inside her. She wonders how strange she looks in this outfit and whether she will be able to impress. Alfred beams with delight at the sight of Maria and admires her beauty. His emotions are sincere, and he does not hide his joy. Admiration is read in his eyes, and he smiles with happiness. Zakar looks at Maria and Alfred with restraint. His confident voice interrupts their thoughts, inviting them to go to the royal evening. His gaze is firm and calm, as befits a duke. 3 heroes go to the ball. Zakar confidently leads them forward. Maria, with a noble posture, holds Alfred's hand, who does not lag behind and happily walks next to them. A royal evening and new events await them. Zakar looks at Maria, determination etched on his face. He delivers a warning, full of authority, making it clear that he does not intend to repeat it twice. Zakar confidently extends his hand, commanding Maria to follow him. His stance is unwavering and menacingly firm, leaving the girl little choice but to obey. Maria can't hide her ironic smile, admitting that in the current circumstances she has neither the strength nor the opportunity to object. Her internal monologue is imbued with sarcasm and slight humility. They find themselves in a royal palace, where an atmosphere of refinement and luxury reigns. The hall is filled with dancing couples, and in the center on the throne sits the king himself, a symbol of power and might. Maria is stunned by the magnificence she sees. She stands in a luxurious dress. Her eyes are wide open and her face expresses genuine admiration. This moment seems truly magical to her. Zakar keeps his cool, pointing out the need to greet the king respectfully. He leads Maria through the glitter and shine, where every step seems symbolic. Maria looks up at the throne and sees the king. Her eyes reflect the ruler's majestic figure, and her heart skips a beat with excitement and respect. Next to the king sits Prince Carlos. The boy with fiery hair radiates confidence and nobility that befits his royal status. Maria cannot take her eyes off him. Her emotions are overwhelming. She can't believe her eyes. Maria is shocked to see Prince Carlos in person, and she can barely contain her delight, barely comprehending the reality of what is happening. Zakar thanks the king for the invitation, and Maria stands nearby, acting as his escort. Their presence in this majestic hall underlines the significance of the moment, heralding an important event. The king, with a smile and a majestic air, welcomes the guests into the throne room, expressing his gratitude for their visit. The atmosphere of an official event shines around, creating tension among those present. The king addresses Maria, the duchess, asking about her family life. Zakar and Maria stand before him in elegant clothes, feeling his gaze. The atmosphere in the hall remains formal. The guests discuss Zakar, admiring his outstanding qualities, but at the same time hinting at his complex character. The hall is filled with whispers and glances, watching the development of events between the main characters. The king notices something strange and wonders what is going on. His expression is wary, as if he suspects something. There is tension all around, as if something unexpected is expected. Zakar answers the king, explaining that his wife, Maria, is unable to speak due to a mysterious illness. The king looks at him doubtfully but accepts the explanation, although the atmosphere in the hall now seems even more tense. The king, smiling but slightly distrustful, notices the sudden change in the mood of the guests. His words are full of hidden meaning, and his observation adds tension to the proceedings. Mary recalls that their marriage was a forced decision by the king for political reasons. Her eyes show anxiety and weariness, reflecting the heavy burden she bears in this situation. The king turns his attention to Alfred, a boy with golden hair, and remarks on how much he has grown since their last meeting. His words cause surprise and tension among those present. Zakar, holding back his emotions, persuades Alfred not to hide from the king. Maria, standing nearby, tries to calm Zakar down, showing support and confidence despite the current situation. The king looks at everyone present, pondering what is happening. His gaze becomes cold and penetrating, as if he has already suspected something and is waiting for the right moment to act. Carlos runs eagerly to Zakar, beaming with happiness. He is glad to meet him and expresses his sincere longing for the time spent with the Duke, clearly admiring him. Carlos asks Zakar to tell him stories about tactics and strategy again. Zakar smiles, agreeing, which causes genuine delight in the little prince. Carlos can't contain his joy after hearing a positive response from Zakar. He is happy that he will be able to listen to his favorite stories again and learn something new. Meanwhile, the king observes the situation and regretfully recalls how much Carlos is attached to the Duke. He understands that this creates additional complications. The king tells Carlos that they have a lot to do today and asks him to go play with Alfred, another boy. Carlos's face shows displeasure, but he obediently remains silent. The king confidently declares that the children will find something to do and will have a better time than the adults. Carlos reluctantly turns to Alfred, who looks puzzled and a little confused. Carlos whispers with annoyance that he would like to spend time with Zakar. For him, meetings with the Duke are much more important than playing with other children. The king, remaining steadfast, replies that the prince will be able to communicate with Zakar another time. He gently but firmly asks his son to obey. Carlos, dejected, agrees and says a short, "Okay." There is disappointment in his eyes, but he knows he cannot contradict his father. The king's words echo in Carlos's head as he silently accepts the situation. His emotions are mixed, pride for Zakar and sadness at not being able to spend time with him right now. Alfred stands in the background, watching Carlos as he confidently walks forward. Carlos encourages Alfred to follow him, confidently leading him without looking back. Alfred looks surprised and slightly unsure, but obediently follows. Suddenly, Carlos starts running, causing Alfred to react unexpectedly. He stumbles and cries out. The moment of his clumsiness is frozen in the air, the boy's legs showing the speed and tension of the situation. Other children approach Alfred. The girl in the red dress and her friends invite Carlos to play tag with them. She smiles, and her energy and enthusiasm energize everyone around her. Carlos does not pay attention to the others for now. The reaction to Alfred's arrival is harsh. One of the children, with a displeased look, notes that Alfred's nightstand has also arrived. This phrase offends the boy, but he decides not to show his resentment. Alfred gathers his courage and, with a determined expression on his face, suddenly declares that he has realized something. His face looks concentrated and excited. Everyone around him freezes, not understanding what exactly he means. Alfred's confident stance attracts everyone's attention. He happily announces that he has learned something, clenching his fists in a burst of enthusiasm. Carlos and the other children stare at him in amazement, not hiding their surprise and curiosity. Carlos grins, his eyes twinkling with mischief. He seems to finally understand that Alfred is ready to join in their game. A sly smile appears on his face, and he decides that Alfred should be the one to start the game. Alfred nods, enthusiastically agreeing. His face lights up with happiness and pride. He finally feels like he doesn't belong and is ready to prove that he can be part of their company. The children begin the game. Carlos, Alfred, and the girl in red run happily along the garden path. Everything around is filled with energy and joy. The night seems alive with their ringing laughter and enthusiasm. Carlos leads the race, smiling, and Alfred finally smiles for real. They run together, forgetting all the grievances. Games and friendship unite them, bringing joy and happiness to each of them. The boy waves his arms behind his head with ease, showing confidence in his elusiveness. He provokes those around him, clearly preparing for a new game. His opponent does not take the threat seriously. As Alfred rushes forward, the boy continues to show calm, but his confidence is threatened. The opponent deftly closes the distance between them and already manages to grab his arm. The boy is caught. Alfred smiles with a mischievous glint in his eyes as he shows off his new training result. He proudly announces that he has become faster, which visibly surprises those around him. For him, this is a huge improvement that he is ready to brag about. A group of children nearby, including Carlos, notice what has happened. The surprise and shock on their faces clearly shows that no one expected this from Alfred, who used to be the slowest of them all. The comic moment is emphasized by the phrase that Alfred, previously slow as a turtle, managed to unexpectedly overcome himself and catch up with his rival. This progress causes admiration and, at the same time, bewilderment among all those present. Alfred's opponent turns around and asks in panic what happened to him. For him, it looks like a miracle. A boy who was never known for his speed suddenly changed so quickly. He can't hide his surprise. Alfred explains with a smile that the secret to his success is constant training. His confidence and pride in himself make others wonder how much effort he put in to become so fast. Impressed by the result, the other children watch Alfred, who once again demonstrates his skills. His run is light, confident, and fast, as if there was a completely different person in front of them. Carlos, however, does not want to remain in the shadows. He decides to take an unexpected step. At the last moment, he cleverly trips Alfredo to prevent him from running. This gesture is filled with a hidden competition between them. Alfred loses his balance and falls to the ground with a thud. Carlos, standing victorious, looks at him with an expression of superiority. Alfred, despite the fall, does not look defeated. In his eyes, you can see the determination to train even more. Alfred falls to the ground, his face a picture of pain and despair. He breathes heavily, clenching his fists in frustration. The moment seems to stretch out and his thoughts pulse with rage and pain. Carlos, smiling and confident, extends his hand to Alfred. His voice is calm and caring, asking if everything is okay, as if he doesn't notice the tension. Carlos radiates innocent goodwill. Alfred slowly looks up and hesitantly reaches for the outstretched hand. His cheeks are flushed with shame and gratitude. He quietly says words of gratitude, as if he has forgotten about his feelings. But inside his soul, everything burns with hatred. The thought that he hates Carlos sounds loud and clear. This contrast between the outside and the inside seems to tear him in half. Alfred grabs Carlos's arm abruptly, and his face contorts with alarm. He is surprised, struck by something he hasn't yet realized. In that moment, a tension arises between them that makes everything around him freeze. Maria, standing in the hall, looks nervous and tense. She can't believe that she is in the same room with the main prince and the king. Her thoughts are running chaotically. Her heart is beating faster than usual. In an attempt to calm down, Maria reaches for a glass of wine. She feels a dry throat and heavy breathing. The excitement does not leave her despite her outward calm. Zakar approaches Maria, his gaze firm and determined. He reminds her that she cannot speak yet and demands that she not go far from him. His words sound like an order and concern at the same time. Maria looks at him, surprised and confused. There is a piercing question in her head. Why is Zakar so worried about her? She feels something more behind his words, something that goes beyond simple patronage. Maria was stunned by Zakar's offer to take his arm. She argued with herself internally, finding the situation awkward, but justified it by saying that they were a couple after all and she shouldn't worry too much. She glanced at him furtively, appreciating his brilliant appearance and good-natured smile. Zakar looked charming, like a hero from a romantic novel, which caused Maria mixed feelings and a little annoyance. Overcoming her inner hesitation, she decided to do as he asked. Her hand rested on his elbow, which seemed quite natural in their situation. She convinced herself that there was nothing strange about it. However, Zakar, trying to explain himself, emphasized that he didn't like this behavior either. The words sounded awkward, which made Maria mentally call him an idiot, completely confirming her expectations. Meanwhile, ominous shadows of curious guests began to appear around them. Someone sarcastically noted that the newly made couple had finally appeared, not hiding their mocking smiles and whispers. The crowd also discussed how their union looked like a political marriage. The ill-wishers began to whisper, enjoying their conversation, unaware that their rumors had already reached Maria. Maria, having heard their conversations, became angry. This made the gossips confused and fell silent in embarrassment. But their attention was drawn to a group of girls who joyfully called out to Maria. The friends looked happy and surrounded her as if they were unaware of what was happening around them. They excitedly exclaimed how long it had been since they had seen each other, filling the atmosphere with bright energy. Their friendly enthusiasm was in complete contrast to the tense atmosphere that had been created earlier. Maria, although she looked confused, tried to keep a smile. She tried to understand who these people were, because she saw them for the first time in her life, but she could not show her surprise. Maria, holding back her excitement, finds herself the center of attention at the ball. 3 girls enthusiastically congratulate her on her wedding and note how wonderful she looks with Zakar, which causes slight bewilderment in the heroine, who does not know how to react. Zakar, hiding behind a mask, listens to the comments addressed to them with bewilderment. Maria shyly waves them away, her gestures demonstrating a desire not to attract unnecessary attention. The girl's thoughts are filled with confusion. She does not even know the names of those who flatter her. One of the girls sincerely praises her appearance, considering Maria the most beautiful at the ball. The compliment is accompanied by exaggerated gestures of admiration, from which Maria experiences conflicting emotions, surprise and slight confusion. The 3 guests smile happily and continue to compliment Maria. One of them playfully touches her shoulder, causing the girl to not understand what is happening. Zakar watches this scene from the side, clearly looking for an excuse to leave. Zakar, coughing, suddenly announces the need to urgently leave on business. Maria casts a look at him, full of surprise and indignation, because only recently he insisted that she stay nearby. The Duke avoids further explanations. Maria looks at Zakar in confusion as he hurries to leave the room. Her face expresses indignation and disappointment. She tries to understand what made him leave so suddenly, remembering his request not to leave him. Surrounded by guests, Maria hears new compliments. The girls admire the jewelry she wore to the ball, calling it beautiful. The admiring glances of the guests awaken in Maria a strange feeling, as if the attention to her has become too intrusive. Maria watches the guests, whose smiles seem a little forced to her. The words of admiration sound too insistent, and Maria involuntarily begins to doubt the sincerity of their intentions. The girls repeat the words in unison, creating an atmosphere of awkwardness. Confusion turns to anxiety. Maria looks up and thoughtfully takes in the crowd's attention. She wonders if these people are trying to achieve something. The girl's face is tense, but she tries to maintain an outward calm. In her imagination, Maria sees the guests reaching out to her jewelry. Their enthusiastic gestures begin to seem greedy to her, as if they were begging for jewelry. The girl, holding back her anxiety, realizes that the attention to her person is not caused by sincere admiration, but by something more selfish. Maria stands surrounded by 3 girls who enthusiastically ask her for something. Their shining looks and smiles create an atmosphere of lightness and playfulness, but Maria apparently feels awkward in front of their excessive attention and decides not to give in to their requests. Maria, sighing heavily, understands that there is no way to avoid the situation. She looks thoughtful and irritated, but gives in to the girls' pressure. With a gesture of fatigue and some irritation, she is about to satisfy their expectations. The girls are beaming with happiness, as if they had received the most precious gift. Their faces are filled with gratitude and joy, and Maria imagines herself giving them something small. They seem pleased, despite the modest gesture, and there is an atmosphere of light comedy around them. The girl opens her palms and sees a small candy on them. She is clearly surprised and perhaps disappointed that she gave out such a modest item in exchange for such persistent requests. Her reaction highlights the absurdity of the situation. Maria begins to carefully walk away from the girls, who stand in shock and clearly did not expect such an outcome. Their disconcerted expressions contrast with her determined look. She understands that such situations only bring trouble and irritation. At this time, Duke Zakar watches Maria and notes that she has changed. He notices that even in communication with her friends, she has become more reserved and distant. His gaze is serious, and he is clearly thinking about the changes in the girl. At the ball, the king addresses all those present, urging them to enjoy the evening to the fullest. His energetic and friendly expression creates a festive atmosphere, emphasizing the importance of the event and the entertainment to come. The king turns his attention to Duke Zakar, wondering why he is hesitating. He asks directly who will dance with his lady, urging Zakar to action. Zakar looks a little confused, but understands that he cannot avoid attention. Zakar bows before the king, agreeing with his words. He looks serious, but a little nervous. The polite and noble gesture shows his determination to follow etiquette and fulfill the expectations placed on him this evening. Zakar approaches Maria and asks her to dance. He looks at her confidently and with respect, but Maria is clearly surprised by his offer. Tension arises between them, filled with curiosity and slight surprise at such an unexpected turn. Maria is clearly unhappy with what is happening, clutching her glass and looking away. Something about the situation irritates her, but deep down she knows that this cannot be avoided. Zakar confidently grabs Maria's hand, declaring that this is the king's order. The girl has no choice but to follow him, although she is full of indignation. The rumors about Maria's dancing skills do not come true in Zakar's eyes. He mockingly criticizes her movements, and the girl, indignant, retreats in complete confusion. Maria's irritation grows. She wonders why Zakar is behaving so provocatively, since it was he who insisted on this dance. Her indignation turns into determination to prove something. Maria remembers taking dance lessons after work, so she could one day shine at a ball. Recalling the effort she put into training, she becomes determined not to embarrass herself in front of the Duke. Her eyes sparkle with fire, and Maria firmly decides to take the situation into her own hands. She mentally vows to show Zakar what she is really capable of, let him regret his words. The king, watching the couple, watches with interest what is happening. He is surprised by how this unexpected duel in the dance between the Duke and the restless Maria is unfolding. Zakar strictly warns the girl not to make any sudden movements, holding her as if she cannot control herself. However, Maria indignantly promises not to obey his commands. Maria no longer tries to restrain herself. Their dance turns into something completely uncontrollable, attracting the attention of everyone around. The guests guests are surprised to hear how intense this situation has become. The girl in the blue dress whispers to her friend that Maria has gotten too carried away. Meanwhile, the tension between Maria and Zakhar reaches its peak. Their dance now resembles a real battle on the dance floor. At the ball, Maria and Zakhar dance, but his displeasure slips through in words about their movements not matching the music. Maria, without losing confidence, insists that this is her best ability, trying to save face in front of her partner. In a fit of awkwardness, Maria steps on Zakhar's shoe. Her stiletto heel leaves a noticeable mark on his shoe. Zakhar barely hides the pain, and Maria realizes her mistake and begins to mentally justify herself. Zakhar, not hiding his surprise and slight irritation, freezes in place. Maria admits her mistake, but this only adds to the tension between them. The dance is interrupted and the situation becomes even more awkward. Blushing with embarrassment, Zakhar nervously steps aside, while Maria decisively leaves the dance hall. A mixture of annoyance and pride boils up inside her, and Zakhar remains puzzled by her behavior, at a loss for words. Maria leaves the brightly lit hall and goes outside to calm down. The cold night air invigorates her, but she continues to mentally replay the recent episode. She crosses her arms, trying to warm herself up and compose herself. In the distance, she notices noise and a crowd of people. 2 guards are helping a small boy in a white suit. This is Prince Carlos. Maria stops in amazement, not understanding what has happened, and begins to approach. At this time, she notices Alfred, who is standing to the side with his head down. Maria is shocked by his presence and anxiously says his name, wondering why he is here and what connection he has with the incident. Carlos smiles at Alfred, offering his help. His calm voice and smile create an odd contrast to the tense atmosphere. Alfred, clenching his fists, glares at Carlos and shouts that he hates him. Maria's internal monologue reflects her confusion. Why is Alfred reacting this way, and what caused such a conflict between the boys? Carlos calmly offers his hand to Alfredo, offering to help him up. His gesture of kindness surprises Maria and makes her wonder about the hidden reasons for what happened. She watches the 2 boys closely, sensing the approach of a new drama. The boy with yellow eyes, Alfred Brown, holds Maria's hand, and cruel thoughts echo in his mind. He is told that he is not like his father, and that his place is in doubt. Alfred's eyes are full of confusion and pain. Alfred hears even more painful words. He is accused of inferiority and told that he inherited cruelty from his dead mother. His eyes widen in shock and lightning strikes in his head. In the heat of the moment, Carlos, who is standing next to him with red hair, loses his composure and abruptly hits Alfred. He cannot stand the insults directed at his friend's mother. Carlos screams and defends his mother. Carlos, who had made the sudden gesture, steps back. His eyes are full of fury, but suddenly he loses his balance, as if stunned by his own impulse. He sways and falls awkwardly backwards. Carlos falls to the ground, and Alfred looks at him in surprise. Both boys find themselves in a confused position in the middle of the garden, surrounded by silence and tension. Alfred's gaze softens, his hands tremble. Alfred tries to speak, but the words get stuck in his throat. He looks scared and stunned. His eyes are full of shame and regret for what happened, but he can't find an explanation for his actions. Carlos, sitting on the ground, yells at Alfred. He doesn't understand what he's doing and accuses him of behaving incomprehensibly. His voice is full of indignation and resentment, as if he didn't expect a blow in return. Carlos's screams attract the attention of the guards, who run to the prince. They call him "Your Highness" in panic and try to figure out what is happening. Carlos is sitting on the ground, his face expressing anger and bewilderment. Carlos raises his hand and points at Alfred. He explains furiously that he tried to help and extended his hand in friendship, but Alfred pushed him away. The prince sounds hurt and confused, as if he had been betrayed. Alfred, still sitting on the ground, clenches his fists and tries to explain. He looks dejected, but his voice is shaking. His quiet "because" remains unfinished, and Carlos shouts back, "Why?" The situation between the boys remains tense and unresolved. Alfred Brown stands silently, listening to the insults directed at him. Someone suggests that his weakness and helplessness are a legacy from his mother, which causes the boy deep emotional pain. An unpleasant scene unfolds in the garden. Carlos holds his hand, feigning offense, while servants surround the children. Maria, terrified, rushes to the scene, peering anxiously into the crowd. Coming closer, Maria looks at Alfred with concern and demands an explanation. She feels that something serious has happened and does not understand why her beloved boy looks so depressed. Carlos, frowning, explains the situation, making Alfred the culprit. He explains that he simply wanted to help Alfred up after he fell, but Alfred suddenly pushed him away. Voices can be heard in the background, confirming Alfred's guilt. Maria, standing in front of Alfred, asks him to explain himself. She looks at him with pain and expectation, but the boy only remains silent, looking down. Alfred is unable to utter a word in his own defense. Alfred suddenly runs away, not wanting to listen to any more accusations. Maria holds out her hand, trying to stop him, but he does not turn around, but disappears among the rose bushes. Sitting alone by the fountain, Alfred is lost in his thoughts. He feels despair and sadness, thinking that no one will be able to understand what he really feels. The pain inside him grows. Alfred reflects on his curse, the ability to sense other people's emotions through touch. He can't tell anyone about it because it seems like too much of a burden to others. Maria finds Alfred at the fountain. She stands next to him, holding an umbrella from the rain, and listens silently. Alfred feels a little calmer next to her, but does not dare to speak first. Finally, Maria gently places her hand on his shoulder, showing that she is there. She is sure that there is an important reason for Alfred's silence, and promises not to rush him, letting him know that he is not alone. Maria looked at Alfred with a warm smile. She understood that it was hard for him, but she did not pressure him, respecting his silence. She assured him that it was his right not to talk about what was tormenting him, and no one had the right to judge him for it. Maria and Alfred were sitting under a large umbrella. The rain was pouring down without stopping, but a cozy world seemed to have arisen around them. Maria thought that she would always be on his side, no matter what happened, creating an atmosphere of safety and trust. Alfred sat with his head down, his eyes full of doubt and regret. Maria's words had touched something deep in his soul, but he remained silent, trying to find the strength to admit what was weighing on him. Maria looked at him with sympathy and understanding. Alfred had finally admitted that he had indeed pushed Carlos away. His voice was low and barely audible. He hadn't meant to do it, and his confession sounded like a desperate attempt to justify himself. Maria continued to listen, holding the umbrella and protecting the boy from the rain. Alfred explained that his action was not the result of a desire to cause pain, but something more than he could share now. He looked down, self-consciously withdrawing. Maria showed him a note asking the reason for his action. Alfred shuddered as if this question had pierced him through and through. He could not answer and said that he was simply not in a position to explain his motives now. Maria stared at the note, trying to figure out what Alfred really wanted. Her thoughts were focused on trying to get to the deeper meaning of his words, as if every action the boy took had an important hidden reason. Alfred raised his head, his eyes shining with tears. He said quietly that he was very sorry. At that moment, he looked incredibly vulnerable, like a child who needed support and understanding. His words were simple, but full of deep regret. Maria tenderly comforts little Alfred, holding him close and letting him know that she is proud of him. Her words instill confidence and warmth in him, making him feel protected and important. Later, Alfred bows to Carlos and apologizes for what happened earlier. He bows his head in shame, sincerely regretting what he did. Maria watches his behavior closely, proud of his responsibility. Carlos, arms crossed, reluctantly forgives Alfred, warning that he will not tolerate such behavior again. Despite the stern tone, the prince does not hide his relief and is ready to forget the past, showing his good nature. Alfred, inspired by Maria's support, is determined to become a worthy man. His eyes are filled with determination, and he believes that he can achieve an ideal worthy of his parents. Looking at Maria, Alfred confidently speaks of his intention to become as outstanding as his father and as exceptional as his mother. He wants everyone to recognize his desire to become better and stronger. Carlos watches Alfred with interest and, hearing his determination, smiles. This encourages him. Alfred has potential, and Carlos involuntarily begins to believe in him, feeling admiration for his honesty. Despite the reconciliation, Carlos begins to feel a little nervous, unsure of how to react to Alfred's sudden words. He asks not to be angry with him anymore, clearly hiding his embarrassment. However, the situation changes dramatically when a sharp cry of "Alfred!" pierces the air. Alfred freezes, turning pale in surprise. Fear is written on his face. The voice belongs to a man he respects very much. Zakar appears before them, menacing and full of anger. His gaze is cold and stern, and his pose emphasizes his strength. The Duke is clearly displeased and demands an explanation of what happened, expecting an answer from his son. Zakar repeats his question, not giving Alfred time to justify himself. The atmosphere becomes tense. Maria and Carlos watch silently, and Alfred, frozen with fear, understands that he must take responsibility. Maria confidently defends Alfred, but does not hide her irritation at the situation. Duke Zakar steps forward, his face stern and determined. He demands an explanation from his son, accusing him of a rude act against Prince Carlos. Zakar turns to Alfred angrily, his voice full of reproach. He asks if he really pushed Prince Carlos and why he did it. Alfred stands silently in front of him, his head down guiltily, unable to explain. The Duke sighs heavily, his anger mixed with fatigue. He looks at his son with disappointment and utters a few words full of reproach. Maria watches what is happening tensely but remains silent for now, clenching her hands into fists. Zakar bows deeply and apologizes to Prince Carlos. He promises to punish Alfred severely for his rudeness and asks him to forgive his son. Maria stands nearby, holding Alfred by the shoulder, her gaze intense. Carlos, despite his youth, shows nobility. He admits that Alfred did not mean to hurt him on purpose and says that he is not angry. His words calm the situation slightly, but the tension remains. The Duke thanks the prince for his understanding, but decides to leave Alfred in the mansion to punish him for his misdeed. Zakar looks unwavering. His decision is final. Maria and Alfred leave the hall, accompanied by the Duke. Zakar, arms crossed over his chest, harshly tells Alfred that he is not good enough for the Brown family. He orders his son to be left here until he comes to his senses and changes his behavior. His words sound like a final sentence. Alfred runs after his father in despair, his eyes full of tears. He screams, begging Zakar to forgive him. The boy stretches out his hand, trying to reach his father, but he remains adamant. Maria looks at Zakar with bewilderment and pain. She insists that upbringing should not be so cruel, but the Duke insists on his own. He asks her not to interfere, stating that this is a necessary process for her son. Maria is left alone with her thoughts. She understands that Zakar would not have done this without a good reason. She clenches her fists, confident that the real problem lies deeper, and decides to figure out what is happening herself. Alfred Brown is shivering in the cold, sitting alone in a dark place. His cheeks are red, and he is thinking about how hard it is to be unloved by his father. He seems sad and vulnerable, deep in thought. He clasps his knees, his gaze fixed downwards. Alfred is convinced that his father really does hate him, and this thought hurts his little heart. The situation seems hopeless, and his loneliness weighs heavily on his soul. Suddenly, Alfred hears a noise and looks up. In front of him, he can see the bars of a door, behind which stands Maria. Her face is illuminated by a warm light, and Alfred peers at her in surprise, not understanding what is happening. Maria calls his name and asks him with concern what he is doing in such a place. Alfred rises to his feet, pressing himself against the door and peering through the bars. Maria looks worried and concerned. Maria reaches through the bars and hands Alfred a bag of buns. He looks at her in surprise, not believing his eyes. Alfred doesn't understand why Maria cares about him, but a warm feeling of gratitude awakens inside him. Alfred hurries to move the chair to reach the bars. He grabs the back of it and pushes with all his might, hoping to reach the gift. The boy's efforts demonstrate his desperation and desire to feel cared for, at least for a moment. Finally, standing on a chair, Alfred reaches for a bun. Maria smiles and reaches out even further to pass the food. This small moment becomes a real salvation for Alfred from feeling lonely. In the dim light, they hold the bun together. Alfred thanks Maria for her kindness. The girl promises that she will not leave him alone and will be there to support him in this difficult time. Alfred clutches the bun and begs Maria to come home and rest. He cares for her as she has cared for him despite her own plight. Maria looks at Alfred with sadness and warmth. Her gaze is filled with tenderness, and she understands how lonely and cold the boy is. A determination to always protect him is born in her heart. Maria peers through the bars of the cell and is amazed by what is happening. She tries to understand whether Alfred was really able to read her thoughts because she did not say a word. Her amazement is mixed with anxiety. The situation seems impossible. Alfred stands in shock, his eyes wide. It's as if he's heard something that has shaken him to the core. The air is icy cold in the space between them, and the boy, shaking, can't find the words. His surprise is almost helpless. At that moment, they both feel a strange connection. Maria, illuminated by the magical light, involuntarily understands that Alfred somehow knows her thoughts and feelings. The boy looks at her in confusion. Their gazes intersect, and the truth becomes frightening. Maria wonders how this could have happened. Her anxiety is growing. After all, she didn't say a word. Her pink eyes are full of worry, and the question, "How did he understand all this?" is spinning in her head. She feels that the secret of her thoughts has been revealed. The fear intensifies. Maria tensely asks herself how Alfred can know about her thoughts. Guesses and panic appear in her head. Her heart beats faster because she does not understand what is happening, but she clearly feels that things are taking an undesirable turn. Alfred, looking guilty and scared, realizes that he has learned of Maria's feelings. His face flushes and his voice trembles. He tries to find an excuse, but the words fail him because the truth is too incredible for an ordinary person. A mixture of panic and joy overcomes Alfred. He tries to hide his embarrassment and smiles nervously, saying that he did not expect such a visit from Maria. His words sound awkward, and he himself awkwardly fidgets with his hands. Maria, watching Alfred through the bars, realizes that the situation is getting out of control. Her face expresses discontent and tension. Inside, she realizes that things are going wrong, and there is no easy explanation. Alfred stands on a chair, looking thoughtful and serious. He understands that what happened cannot be explained from the perspective of an ordinary person. His thoughts are focused on what happened, and his face is filled with hidden anxiety. Maria is lost in thought, touching her lips with her finger. She reflects on how no one can really know someone else's thoughts. But now, thinking about what happened, she feels that an incomprehensible magical connection with Alfred has appeared in her life. Maria, thoughtfully pressing her hand to her lips, is surprised by the new information about Alfred's unusual powers. She cannot believe that the boy has such an ability and begins to suspect a hidden meaning in it. Alfred, standing in front of the door, catches the note that Maria hands him through the bars. Her words sound like a cautious question. Does he really know what other people are thinking? Maria wants confirmation of her suspicions. The girl continues her guesses and cautiously suggests that Alfred's unusual ability may be somehow connected to the incident that occurred in which Prince Carlos is involved. She waits for an answer, holding another note in her hands. Alfred reads the note and nervously replies that it is not at all as Maria suggests. He tries to explain the situation, but feels uneasy under her gaze and the pressure of her words. Maria watches his reaction and thinks that such evasive answers only make Alfred even more suspicious. Her persistence does not allow the boy to hide the truth, despite his attempts. Alfred opens the note and sees the words written on it. Internally moved, he reads the line that confirms their friendly relationship. At that moment, he doubts but feels Maria's sincerity. "Friends?" Alfred repeats, surprised and a little confused. Confusion is reflected on his face because he did not expect such a statement from Maria, especially after her persistent interrogation. Maria looks at the boy through the bars and demands a promise, not to tell anyone about their conversation and his abilities. Her voice sounds stern, and there is a hint of trust between them. She smiles, reaching her hand through the bars, assuring Alfred that she will not harm him and will never let him down. There is warmth in her eyes. and the boy begins to waver between fear and trust. Alfred, still hesitant, looks at Maria's outstretched hand. He cannot refuse her words, and despite his fear, he cautiously accepts her promise. His eyes are filled with anxiety, but he agrees. Okay. Maria looks at Alfred with tenderness and sympathy, as if promising to protect him. She does not want to leave him alone, understanding how hard it was for him. Alfred, standing on the bench, reaches out to Maria through the small window in the wooden door. Their hands touch, and he finally finds comfort in this gesture. The boy had been in pain all this time, but he showed no weakness. Little Alfred breaks down and starts crying. He had to keep a huge secret alone, which was too much for a child. He tried to hold on, but now his feelings are overwhelming. Maria, looking at the crying Alfred, cannot hold back her tears. She does not understand why she is crying, but the boy's despair touches her to the depths of her soul. Their pain turns out to be connected. Alfred holds Maria's hand and tells her that he can hear the thoughts of people he touches. This gift has been both a blessing and a curse for him, as he can feel the pain of others. Maria listens attentively to his confession. She asks if it only happens when they touch, and Alfred confirms. Their clasped hands become a symbol of trust and understanding. Alfred, looking at Maria with concern, asks the question, is she afraid of him? He is used to fear and rejection from others, so he is worried about her reaction. Maria replies that she is not afraid. But she does not understand why Alfred treated Prince Carlos badly, because his actions came as a surprise to everyone. Alfred explains that Carlos tripped him and he fell. In the face of hurt and injustice, his abilities kicked in and he saw something that made him do it. After the fall, Alfred extended his hand to Prince Carlos, and at the moment of touch, he heard his thoughts. This event became a key moment that changed the boy's attitude to the world around him. Alfred Brown, a little boy with golden eyes, holds the hand of an adult, barely holding back tears. His face is sad and his eyes are full of pain. He heard hateful words addressed to him and was shocked by this. Maria, a girl with white hair, stands in front of the latticed window. Her gaze is sad but sympathetic. She listens to Alfred, understanding that he is hurt not only by what was said, but also by the past, which he remembers with difficulty. Alfred continues to speak, his voice shaking with emotion. He tells how the Carlos he remembers laughed at the memory of his dead mother. It was unbearable, and he could not simply remain silent. Maria listens attentively through the bars of the window. Her eyes reflect compassion. Alfred says that his rage flared up instantly. He became angry, but the words stuck in his throat, and he could not answer the offender. Tears stream down Alfred's cheeks. He trembles, wiping them away with his hand. The little boy breaks down in sobs, remembering how helplessly silent he was in the face of injustice. He feels shame and anger at the same time. The image of his mother, tender and beautiful, comes to his mind. He vividly sees her bright smile and loving gaze. Her memory is sacred to him, and any insult to her becomes unbearable. Now Maria sees the boy standing on the chair, clinging to the bars. Her heart aches with the understanding of his pain. He admits that this is why he pushed Carlos. It was the only way he could express himself. Maria continues to watch Alfred silently, her gaze sad but deep. She understands that everything he did was to protect precious memories, and not with malicious intent. Alfred, still shaking, says he wants to become a strong and outstanding man. His voice grows firmer. He must do this so that no one will dare insult his mother again. With his head held high, Alfred vows before Maria and himself that he will protect his mother's memory. He will never again allow anyone to harm her name, no matter what strength or decision it takes. Maria looks sadly through the window bars, remembering Alfred's words. She understands why he decided to support her then. Her gaze is full of longing and thoughtfulness, as if she found the answer to the question that had been tormenting her for a long time. Alfred confidently promises Maria that he will try. His determination inspires the girl, and she promises that she will support him in everything. Maria smiles, her eyes shining with sincere warmth and support. Alfred joyfully extends his hand, surrounded by flowers, and with a smile on his face, he speaks of how happy he is that Maria has become his friend. His words are filled with childlike sincerity and genuine joy. Maria and Alfredo make a promise by interlocking their little fingers in a sign of friendship and mutual support. The moment is full of tenderness and hope, as if they are vowing not to abandon each other and to move forward together. A boy in a green suit climbs onto a chair to reach the window where Maria stands behind bars. She holds his hand and their fingers touch. Suddenly, something happens and Alfred loses his balance, crying out in fear. Zakar appears in the dungeon with a lantern in his hand. He goes to Maria and coldly asks what she is doing here. His sudden appearance creates an atmosphere of anxiety and tension, interrupting their conversation. Maria is stunned by Zakar's presence and looks scared. She says his name with anxiety, her eyes full of confusion. Zakar caught her by surprise. Zakar, looking at Maria, notes that her face looks strange, as if expressing anxiety. His words sound sharp, which makes her tense up, and the warm light of the lamp only emphasizes the atmosphere of mistrust between them. Maria and Zakar are standing in a stone room by a massive door. The girl is trying to explain something, but instead of support, she gets an unpleasant remark about how she looks. Her eyes widen with indignation and surprise. Maria is outraged and mentally explodes, accusing Zakar of being unable to communicate with girls. She clenches her fists in resentment and sarcastically ridicules his words, which makes the atmosphere between them even more tense. Zakar does not back down and looks at Maria with displeasure. He suspects that she has some kind of plan and demands an explanation. His gaze is full of severity, which makes the girl look for a way out of the situation. Maria interrupts Zakar irritably, clearly trying to turn the situation around. She clenches her fists and looks angrily at the man. Zakar holds the lamp, calmly observing her indignant reaction. Alfred suddenly appears and intervenes in the argument, defending Maria. He shouts that the girl only came here because she was worried about him. His emotions break through the shouts, causing confusion among those present. Zakar looks thoughtfully at Maria and Alfred as if assessing their behavior. Maria turns away, trying to hide her awkwardness. Zakar's tense gaze makes her even more nervous. Maria admits to herself that she wanted to spend time with Alfred without Zakar noticing. However, the situation is getting out of control. The man is watching her every move too closely, which complicates her plan. Maria begins to wonder if Zakar knows about Alfred's abilities. This thought worries her and makes her doubt her actions. She bites her finger deep in thought. The situation escalates. Maria, standing at the bars, touches the bars with her finger, attracting attention. Someone says her name, as if calling her to account. The atmosphere of anxiety intensifies, as if something important is about to happen. Maria turns to Alfred, asking him to keep the secret and not tell his father about what happened. She looks serious, and the boy watches her warily from behind the bars. The tension in the room increases, hinting at the importance of their conversation. Maria thinks decisively and decides to act cunningly, choosing a certain strategy. Her gaze speaks of firm confidence, and in her thoughts she turns to Alfred, showing her readiness to overcome the situation. Alfred looks up at Maria, confused and slightly scared. His silent expression shows that he feels guilty and does not quite understand how to cope with what is happening. His gaze is full of uncertainty. Suddenly Zakar appears, asking a question full of anger and suspicion. Maria looks surprised and tense. Her posture betrays an attempt to defend herself. The atmosphere is tense. The Duke clearly suspects something and demands an explanation. A frightened Alfred, standing to the side, breaks down and starts screaming, begging his father to forgive him. He swears loudly that he sincerely regrets what he did. His despair is evident in his tears and trembling voice, which echoes throughout the room. Zakar looks at Alfred attentively. His face is clouded with heavy thoughts. He is in no hurry to react, thinking over what he has heard. His stern look and cold words reveal disappointment and firmness in his decision. The man takes out the key and slowly unlocks the lock. The sound of the mechanism is heard in the silence of the room, and his calm actions contrast with the emotional background of the situation. Zakar makes a decision, but expresses it with restraint and calculation. Zakar leads Alfred out of the room, holding a lantern in his hand and pointing him forward. The boy obediently follows his father, his head down. The darkness of the corridor and the cold light of the lantern emphasize the importance of the conversation taking place. The Duke sternly warns Alfred never to be rude to members of the royal family and reminds him of the consequences. His words sound like a final sentence, and his face remains impassive. Zakhar makes it clear that there will be no second chance. Alfred barely holds back his tears and whispers, "Yes." His face expresses deep sadness and fear of his father's disappointment. He realizes his mistake and the gravity of the situation, standing under Zakhar's stern gaze. Maria, clenching her fists, looks furiously at Zakhar, standing next to Alfred, who sadly lowered his head. She realizes that the guy in front of her is not just an ordinary offender. The determination to protect Alfred at any cost is growing inside her. Zakhar, keeping an indifferent expression on his face, calmly reminds Maria that her anger does not matter. He reproaches her for not even wanting to know the truth about Alfred's actions and tries to confuse her with his cold-bloodedness. But Maria does not give up. She furiously tears out a sheet of paper and begins to write with such force that the pen leaves deep furrows. Her thoughts are clear. She will not allow injustice to go unpunished, even if the whole world is against her. With an expression of determination, Maria presents the proof. Carlos tripped Alfredo, causing him to fall. She demands justice, openly outraged, and will not tolerate silence. However, Zakhar, sighing heavily, answers almost indifferently that he doesn't care. Neither Carlos' guilt nor Maria's explanations change his decision. His cold words sound like a sentence for Maria, who expected a different reaction. Maria, still full of indignation, cannot believe his words. She sees something unfair and cruel in them, but Zakhar is sure, whether Carlos is guilty or not, nothing can be changed. The matter remains the matter, and they are subject to the royal order. Mary, not holding back her emotions, explains that serving the royal family comes with restrictions. They are forbidden to act in retaliation or take any action, even if it is just. Alfred stands nearby, his eyes full of pain and shame. Zakhar, without looking away, repeats his order. He warns Maria not to interfere in the process of Alfred's upbringing, otherwise she will only harm him. Zakhar says this confidently and irrevocably, as if finally putting an end to it. Maria, gritting her teeth in frustration, shakes her head, unable to contain her rage. The fire inside her continues to burn despite the Duke's words. She is determined not to give in, despite the pressure he puts on her. Maria looks at Zakhar with a challenge. Her determination grows stronger with each passing moment. She makes it clear she will never give up on this idea, even if she has to fight alone. Her gaze is full of anger, but also of strength that cannot be broken. In the half-light of the night, Alfred looked confused, trying to say something. Maria and Zakhar stood nearby, illuminated by the light of the lantern, carefully observing his behavior. The boy was tensely thinking about how to stop what was happening. Gathering his courage, Alfred pointed to the window with surprise and alarm in his voice. His eyes widened as if he saw something unusual. Maria and Zakhar became wary, turning their attention to the boy and his gesture. Outside the high window, a bright moon shone, surrounded by clouds. Alfred raised his hand and confidently pointed at it. It was as if he was trying to convince his companions that the mistress of the moon was laughing at them and their actions. Maria and Zakhar looked at Alfred in confusion, not understanding what he was talking about. Zakhar frowned, and Maria feigned surprise on her face. Both glanced towards the window, but there was nothing unusual there. Zakhar and Maria exchanged glances. She began to doubt the reality of what was happening, finding it difficult to find words. Zakhar looked thoughtful, trying to understand why Alfred was acting so strangely. For them, there was no one in the window. Maria felt relieved and smiled slightly, admitting that she had momentarily lost focus. She glanced at Alfred again, noting his seriousness and unwavering confidence. The tension in the air was growing. Maria and Zakhar started arguing. Their glances were lightning bolts at each other. They tried to understand what was going on, but each stuck to his own opinion. The situation looked absurd and funny. Suddenly, Maria changed her tone. She gently approached Alfred, took his hand, and asked if he could tell her about his power. The scene took on a gentle and magical mood, as if time had stopped. Alfred's face lit up with a wide smile. His eyes sparkled with happiness, and he enthusiastically agreed. It was as if stars were shining around the boy, giving him an amazing magic and purity. Zakhar looked at this picture attentively. His wary gaze betrayed his growing anxiety. He noted to himself that Maria and Alfred were holding hands and wondered how long ago this had started. Melio holds the letter with a slight smile and asks Zakhar with interest if he has let Alfred out of the punishment room. His gaze is mocking but caring, as if he knows very well how the Duke treats the boy. Zakhar leans languidly on his arm, answering with an unperturbed expression. His tone is cold, but there is weariness and hidden worry in his eyes. Perhaps Alfred really has caused him more trouble than he wants to admit. Melio is surprised when he hears that the Duke planned to leave Alfred in the room until the next day. A guess flashed in his eyes. Zakhar, despite his strictness, was worried about the boy, and his words were just a mask. Catching himself on this thought, Melio grins. Zakhar notices this and looks away, as if hiding something. A slight smile flashes on the face of his subordinate. He understands that the Duke is not as insensitive as he tries to seem. Zakhar, pondering the situation, nervously paces back and forth. His thoughts are confused, which makes Melio chuckle. The situation is clearly awkward. There is tension in the air and a hint of awkward concern for Alfred. Having collected his thoughts, Melio hands Zakhar an envelope with an important letter. The Duke frowns and takes it slowly, as if he senses something unusual. His gaze is focused, and his hand squeezes the envelope. Zakhar opens the letter and learns that it is an invitation from Marquis Darn. His eyes darken with thought. The event promises to be significant. The scene shifts to a majestic city where future changes await them. Alfred looks out of the carriage window with delight, enchanted by the scenery. His golden eyes sparkle with admiration. The nature, the castles, and the blue sky seem like fairy tales to him. Joy fills his entire small figure. Zakhar sternly warns Alfred not to stick his head out, which makes the boy flinch. Maria smiles next to him, her calmness softening the atmosphere. Alfred sits down obediently, but his eyes still sparkle with interest. The boy does not hide his happiness. They will meet Maria's family for the first time. Alfred dreams of this day impatiently, his voice ringing with joy. Maria and Zakhar watch silently, sharing his enthusiasm, albeit in different ways. Maria radiated calm and a soft smile that did not foretell anything bad, but her thoughts were not so optimistic. Her gaze betrayed the anxiety that she tried to hide under a mask of confidence. Her patience snapped when, amidst the excitement and hesitation, she abruptly expressed her dissatisfaction with what was happening. Maria, not hiding her irritation, complained to Zakhar and Alfred, clearly not delighted with their upcoming visit. Maria sighed heavily, realizing that there was no point in arguing. She felt cornered. The journey had already begun, and there was no turning back, despite her reluctance to face the difficulties that lay ahead. The Darn house loomed on the horizon, and the memory of that family made her shudder inside. Maria could not hide her uneasiness, thinking about the dark reputation of that family, where secrets and intrigues flourished. More and more confident in her guesses, Maria felt something was wrong. She suspected that Zakhar and the Darn family were somehow connected. Her intuition told her that unpleasant discoveries awaited them ahead. Maria looked confused and depressed from the gravity of the situation. She tried to calm down and mentally promised herself to have a drink as soon as this was all over. Everything that was happening was getting on her nerves, as if it was a waking dream. A massive, gloomy building appeared before their eyes, the Darn mansion. Zakhar called for everyone to enter, inviting Maria and Alfred to follow him. The silence increased the tension that was felt in every step they took. Marquis Darn appeared at the threshold with a challenging smile, extending his hand to the guests. His greeting was overly cordial, but there was something unkind in his eyes that made Maria's insides go cold. Maria, observing the Marquis, came to the conclusion that he was too much like a classic villain. His smile, manners, and mysterious look only increased her suspicions and distrust of the owner of the house. She stood next to Zakhar, still confused, wondering how things would turn out. Maria knew that confronting the Darn family would inevitably lead to the revelation of secrets that could change their lives forever. Maria is stunned by the sudden meeting with her father, Marquis Darn. The sight of the old man evokes mixed feelings in her. She cannot get rid of the tension and memories of the past. Meanwhile, Zakar turns around, ready to engage in conversation. Zakar, maintaining formal politeness, says that he is glad to see the Marquise again. His calm and collectedness contrast with Maria, who remains silent, tormented by internal discomfort. The atmosphere seems heavy and oppressive. Marquis Darn smiles smugly, pointing out that Zakar hasn't changed at all. The comment comes across as dismissive praise, which leaves the atmosphere tense. The Marquise's gaze remains sharp and appraising. Darn, noticing Maria, says that she also looks beautiful, but his gaze pierces the girl through and through. His cold interest and question about her relationship with Zakar make her feel insecure, as if she had turned into a little girl again. The Marquis suggests that they all sit down and discuss business, but his casual tone only increases the tension. Zakar remains collected, and Maria mechanically holds Alfred's hand, as if trying to find support in her son in this awkward situation. Lost in her thoughts, Maria remembers that her father didn't even bother to say hello to her when they met. This hurts her pride and brings up old grievances. She stands frozen, feeling once again like an extra in his life. Maria sits silently, clutching the letter in her hands, unable to utter a word. She is surprised by her condition. The words are stuck in her throat. Next to her, Alfred quietly watches his mother, sensing her tension and sadness. The Marquis grins as he notices that his chatty daughter, for the first time, does not know what to say. His dismissive manner increases her helplessness. Zakar remains unperturbed, but his gaze becomes even more stern. The Marquis, trying to save face in front of Zakar, apologizes for any inconvenience caused by Maria. He says this with slight awkwardness but maintains dignity and tact, trying not to aggravate the situation even more. The Marquis, still playing the role of a caring father, asks her not to be strict with Maria. However, his words sound superficial and insincere. His gestures and tone betray arrogance, which makes Maria feel again how cold and distant her father is. An elderly, gray-haired man in brightly decorated clothes abruptly interrupts the conversation, causing tension. Maria notices a strange pain in her chest, and his cold gaze evokes a premonition of trouble. He threatens with his request, but insists on cooperation. Zakar stands, holding back his emotions. His calm voice brings clarity. Maria was not a problem, as many believe. He defends her to the Marquis, explaining that she lost her voice. His gaze is full of determination, which surprises the girl. The Marquis, sitting with easy confidence, gets down to business. He demands an expansion of the mining business, but for this he needs the king's permission. There is a hidden challenge in his words that arouses suspicion in those present. Maria tenses up and begins to analyze the Marquis's words in her mind. His abrupt transition to the matter seems suspicious, and she assumes that he is trying to manipulate Zakar for his own interests and the support of the king. Zakar's attentive gaze betrays his wariness. He looks at the Marquis carefully, as if trying to guess his true intentions. His voice sounds reserved, but questioning. He demands to know what exactly the Marquis means. The Marquis, aware of his advantage, is relaxed. He confidently states that he does not expect an immediate response to his proposal. His smile and demeanor radiate self-confidence, which only increases the tension in the room. Maria and Zakar look at the Marquis with apprehension. They understand that there is something more than just business hidden behind his words. Young Alfred is also tense and seems to sense an approaching storm, but he remains silent, watching the adults. Zakar sits at the head of the table and Maria is next to him. He prepares to give an answer, but an oppressive silence hangs in the air. The Marquis continues with a grin, as if he already knows that he will win this verbal duel and get his way. The situation is electrifying. Maria, Alfred, and Zakar are in a difficult situation. Suspicions are growing, and each of them understands that refusing the Marquis could lead to catastrophic consequences. Marquis Darn invites Zakar and his family to visit the mines to better understand the scale of the extraction. The Marquis's words seem friendly, but his smile hints at hidden intentions, and the air is tense. Zakar looks thoughtfully at the Marquis, pondering the meaning of his words. He understands that the mining industry is a key element of the country, and every step they take requires caution. The details of the situation raise alarming thoughts. The Marquis laughs and praises Zakar, noting his intelligence and insight. However, behind this praise lies a subtle calculation. He carefully watches the reactions of those present, enjoying control over the conversation and the scenario being played out. Suddenly, the Marquise turns the conversation to the children, which enrages Maria. Her gaze fills with hatred and anger boils inside. Maria understands that this conversation is an attempt to press on a weak spot and discourage their family. Maria angrily clenches her fists, looking at Alfred, who is sitting next to her. She is indignant that the boy has become an involuntary witness to the Marquise's offensive innuendos. Inwardly, she is ready to protect her son at any cost, but tries to maintain external calm. The Marquis looks calmly at Alfred and provocatively asks him who he would like, a brother or a sister. The boy looks confused, his cheeks flush. Maria notices this and feels her anger towards the Marquis growing. Maria exclaims abruptly and emotionally that she already has a child, showing how much she values Alfred. The boy cuddles up to his mother, and his gaze expresses complete trust. The Marquis, however, continues to maintain his smug smile. The Marquis, with slight mockery, hints that Maria and Alfred are powerless to change anything. His words sound like a challenge, and his posture demonstrates confidence. This aggravates the situation and makes Zakar prepare for a decisive response. Zakar, without changing his facial expression, says a firm no. His voice is calm and cold, like a knife blade. The Marquis freezes for a moment, realizing that his game has failed. With his refusal, Zakar sets a clear line of what is permitted. Silence fills the hall. Zakar looks at the Marquis with icy determination, demonstrating that he will not tolerate insults. Maria feels supported, and Alfred relaxes next to her. The Marquis understands that his influence has not worked. Zakar confidently explains that Alfred only communicates with those he trusts. Nearby, worried Maria and little Alfred, sheltered by her care, closely monitor the situation, experiencing a mixture of surprise and caution. The white-haired man smiles and offers to do something special for Alfred in honor of his first visit. His friendliness and light tone ease the tension in the room, creating an atmosphere of good nature. Alfred, cautiously pressed into Maria's arms, finds no words for the proposal. His gaze is filled with mistrust and fear as his uncle's outstretched hand approaches him, causing even more alarm in those around him. Daniel enters the room, his voice calm and confident. After greeting his father, he immediately attracts attention with his posture and his bright, almost ethereal appearance, which contrasts with the surroundings. Daniel, smiling softly, asks if Zakar has gotten into an awkward situation. His polite and calm tone softens the tension, and there is a slight mockery on his face, as if he already knows the answers to his questions. Maria continues to comfort Alfred, holding him close. Daniel, kneeling next to her, apologizes for what happened and addresses the child with understanding, as if trying to smooth over the misunderstanding that had arisen. Daniel, standing in front of the decorated hall, thanks the guests for their visit. His voice sounds sincere and his smile is warm, enhancing the sense of peace and harmony that his presence brings to the space. The room is filled with life again. Daniel announces that dinner is ready and suggests continuing the conversation at the table. Zakar, Maria, and Alfred, who are on the sofa, listen attentively to his words, gradually relaxing. Maria, looking at her brother with restraint and sternness, introduces him as Daniel. Her tone and facial expression emphasize her respect and the seriousness with which she treats what is happening, not allowing emotions to take over. Alfred finally smiles as he enjoys the treat. His face glows with happiness, and his rosy cheeks emphasize the pleasure he is enjoying. He is filled with warmth and joy, forgetting the fears and worries that troubled him earlier. Alfred smiles delightedly at Daniel, who is clearly pleased that the boy enjoyed the dish he prepared. Their carefree joy fills the room, creating an atmosphere of warmth and comfort. Maria runs into her mother, who squints and carefully assesses her new style of dress. The woman notices that her daughter no longer wears so much jewelry, which surprises and worries her. Maria's mother ostentatiously opens her red fan and continues to notice the changes. She is adorned with jewels from head to toe, which emphasizes her passion for luxury. The flowers around her enhance her majestic image. Admiring herself, Maria's mother exclaims with exaggerated horror that she has too many ornaments. Maria, depicted in a comical form, looks confused, irritated by her mother's obsession and comments. Maria patiently listens as her mother draws conclusions about her changes. According to her, Maria's inner energy has changed. Her preferences in clothes have changed, and her voice seems to have disappeared somewhere. Maria is clearly tired of these absurd remarks. Meanwhile, Zakar, looking serious and collected, approaches Marquis d'Arn. He offers to discuss the mine and invites him to a meeting the next day. Zakar does not hide his interest and businesslike approach. Maria, lost in thought, dreamily recalls her past life. She is interested in mines because she previously worked in a metal factory. She is curious to see the mines of another world, which gives her thoughts a new purpose. Maria talks to Alfred with care, explaining her plans to him. She asks if the boy is afraid of being left alone. Alfred smiles and assures that he is not against it, because he trusts Maria. Alfred smiles even wider when Maria gently pinches his cheek. He agrees to her offer on the condition that Maria will be there too. His eyes are filled with admiration and affection for the girl. Zakar notices Alfred's reaction and is surprised by his request. The boy enthusiastically asks if he can go with them to the mine. His serious tone and determination make Zakar think about whether to agree to his unexpected wish. Duke Zakar unexpectedly offers Alfred the opportunity to visit the mine, pointing out that not every aristocrat gets such a chance. He convinces the boy that it will be useful for his understanding of the world and experience. Alfred enthusiastically agrees. His face lights up with happiness and curiosity, which surprises those present. He is genuinely happy to have the opportunity to spend time in a new environment with Zakar. Alfred suggests that Maria accompany them, adding that the trip will be even more fun if the three of them go together. He holds Maria's hand confidently, as if trying to convince her not to refuse. Daniel laughs at the idea, confident that Maria has no interest in mining or quarrying. Remembering her words about not wanting to get dirty, he laughs and teases his sister. Maria suddenly agrees to go, surprising everyone. She holds a note and confirms her decision with words, which delights Alfred and slightly disconcerts Daniel, who clearly did not expect such a turn of events. Daniel notices that Maria has changed a lot. His smile becomes thoughtful and he watches her with new interest. It seems to him that her determination and behavior are no longer the same as before. The landscape around them changes. High mountains and majestic nature appear before their eyes. Zakar announces that he will accompany them on this journey, which gives the whole scene a solemnity. All the travelers are in the carriage and are watching the breathtaking views. Daniel confidently declares that they will soon see everything with their own eyes, heating up the anticipation and interest of Alfred and Maria. Alfred and Maria look out the carriage window with delight, amazed by the grandeur of the world around them. Their admiration is sincere and genuine, as if they were encountering such a miracle of nature for the first time. The majestic silver mine of Bala, one of the most important financial veins of the country, opens up before them. The mountains seem endless and their grandeur inspires respect and admiration in the entire group. Maria found a dark stone in the ground, thoughtfully examining it and assuming that it could be something valuable. She realizes that silver mines sometimes contain other minerals such as tin. Maria is sure that there have been cases in history when tin was mined in silver mines. The existence of such a possibility gives her hope that the stone found may indeed have considerable value. If tin is found in the mine, it means that the place has greater strategic importance. Maria understands that such a discovery could attract the attention of the state, increasing interest in these mines. She concludes that national interest in such mines will increase if other valuable minerals are confirmed. A seemingly unremarkable stone could be the key to new opportunities. However, Maria, looking at Zakar and Daniel, understands that even if she tries to explain her conclusions, they are unlikely to take her seriously. She silently sighs, holding the stone in her hands and assessing the situation. Alfred Brown approaches and Maria shows him the find. She says that the stone could be valuable and hopes that Alfred's father will understand the importance of the find. Her words are full of hope and determination. Alfred smiles and confidently accepts the stone from Maria's hands. He is encouraged by her trust and promises to take control of the situation, assuring that he himself will make sure that the stone is noticed. Happy Alfred runs up to Zakar and Daniel, proudly showing them his find. He is sure that it is a beautiful and unusual stone, and hurries to share the joy with his father, counting on his approval. Zakar examines the stone with interest and agrees that it is a rare and valuable mineral. His observation confirms the significance of the find, and he and Daniel begin to discuss its possible origin. However, Zakar concludes that it is not silver. He strongly suggests throwing away the find as, in his opinion, it is useless. Maria remains disappointed but understands that her intuition may still be correct. Maria looks worriedly at Zakar and the workers, who are discussing something important. She does not know what to do, and clearly feels out of place among the men immersed in conversation. Her thoughts hover around the uncertainty of the situation. Finding a strange stone on the ground, Maria decides to keep it for herself since no one shows interest. Her movements show slight disappointment and loneliness, but the find awakens curiosity and a spark of hope for something unusual. Standing at the entrance to the cave, Maria looks at the stone with curiosity. Alfred suddenly notices something shiny inside the darkness. His eyes light up with interest, and he begins to approach the entrance, ignoring the warning. Alfred, pointing his finger into the depths of the cave, shouts that something is sparkling inside. He immediately rushes inside, causing concern in Maria. The girl calls him in a panic, afraid that he will stumble upon danger in the darkness. Maria, without thinking, rushes after Alfred. They are interrupted by the worker's voice, who shouts that entering the cave is prohibited due to danger. But the boy has already disappeared into the darkness, and Maria rushes after him, not noticing the warning. Zakar and the worker, noticing the commotion, run to help. Zakar looks worried and decisively commands everyone to stop, but the situation has already gotten out of control. His facial expression betrays anger and anxiety. Meanwhile, in the cave, Maria and Alfred find themselves deep inside. Zakar, taking a lantern, also hurries after them. The echo of footsteps sounds alarming, and the cave walls seem threatening. Zakar calls Alfred, ordering him to go back. The cave suddenly shakes, and Maria realizes with horror that an earthquake is happening. She stops, looking around, trying to figure out what is happening. Panic takes hold of her as the rocks begin to crumble. Zakar manages to catch Maria, saving her from the falling rocks. He hugs her tightly, his eyes full of worry. Maria, looking at him, understands that Zakar is ready to risk his life for her safety. Maria looks at Zakar in confusion, who makes sure she is okay. His calm but demanding gaze gives her the strength to cope with her panic. Zakar gently but confidently asks if everything is okay, ready to take control of the situation again. Maria, worried and shocked, looks at her hands, trying to comprehend what has happened. She thinks about how Zakar helped her, not leaving her in trouble, and her face expresses concern for him and for their common situation. Meanwhile, Alfred, a boy with disheveled hair, runs forward along a dangerous and dark stone corridor. His movements are full of determination, and he tries to catch up with someone or something, shouting requests to wait for him. Maria, worried about Alfred's fate, suddenly realizes that Zakar is wounded. She panics and asks herself questions about what happened to the boy and where he is now. There is fear and growing tension in her voice. Zakar appears before Maria with a lantern in his hand, calming her with his presence. His confidence gives the girl some support, but he himself looks tired and worried. He notices Maria's confusion and tries to understand how they could have lost Alfred. Maria, depressed by the realization that Zakar was hurt, blames herself. She bitterly remembers how Zakar saved her despite his own wounds. Zakar, surprised by her emotions, only listens silently, but the pain in his shoulder becomes more and more obvious. However, Zakar tries not to pay attention to his wounds and assures Maria that he is fine. He suggests focusing on finding Alfred, who needs their help much more. Maria clasps her hands in prayer and desperately wants to hear Alfred's voice. The darkness and silence weigh on her, and her thoughts revolve around the question of where the boy is and what happened to him. Finally, Alfred's weak voice comes from the darkness. He says that he can hear them and that he is nearby. Zakar raises the lantern higher, lighting the way, and Maria looks with relief in the direction from which the boy's voice came. Zakar asks Alfred worriedly if he is okay and if he is hurt. His voice is full of genuine concern, and he peers tensely into the darkness, not seeing the boy. Alfred comes out of hiding and turns to them, telling them that he was only slightly bruised, but not seriously injured. His brave smile and confident voice reassure Zakar and Maria, giving them hope for a successful outcome. Zakar and Maria move carefully through the dark cave. The Duke holds a lantern, lighting the way, and notes that Maria, despite her fatigue, is still holding on. He is reassured that she remains conscious because the path ahead is not easy. Zakar turns to an unknown interlocutor, promising that help will come soon. He calls for a little patience, showing that someone important to them is in trouble and the situation requires urgent action. Maria silently supports his determination. Zakar, directing the light of the flashlight, notices the rock fragments and assumes that they will be able to get to the other side. He calculates the path, hoping that this will help them get out or reach their goal. Zakar stops Maria, asking her to wait where she is. His actions seem deliberate, but Maria, with anxiety in her eyes, does not take her eyes off him, sensing danger or a hidden threat ahead. Suddenly, Maria flinches from a vague sound, as if something is collapsing or starting to happen. Zakar turns around sharply, looking in the same direction as her, his face tense. They both become wary, not understanding what awaits them. Maria, clenching her fists and gathering all her courage, declares that their current actions are only a temporary measure. She is determined to find a way out of the situation, despite her fatigue and possible wounds. Zakar watches her determined gaze. Zakar is wounded and Maria rushes to help, bandaging his arm. Despite her clumsy efforts, he is grateful for her care and feels relieved. The atmosphere is tense, but there is hope for a way out of the situation. Zakar looks a little more confident and thanks Maria for her help. However, the tension does not subside. His gaze is still wary, as if he senses a danger that is not yet passed. The situation around him remains threatening. Leaning over the edge of the cliff, Zakar anxiously calls out to Alfred. His voice is full of despair and worry, and his eyes reflect the fear of losing a loved one. It is dark and deserted around, which increases the anxiety in his heart. Alfred, shaking and worried, slowly emerges from the darkness. His golden eyes fill with tears when he sees his father. His childish face is tired and afraid, but he continues to move forward bravely towards Zakar. Zakar comes down and hugs Alfred, pressing him to himself. He tries to calm the boy, saying that everything will be fine now. Alfred nods trustingly, sobbing, and for a moment there is peace and warmth between them. Zakar understands that they need to leave immediately and lifts Alfred. He tells the boy to climb first, setting an example of determination and care. His gaze is still tense, and every gesture betrays concern for their safety. Alfred is already at the top and calls Maria, leaning over the edge of the cliff. His voice is filled with joy and hope that they will finally be reunited. He reaches out to her, as if trying to help her out of a dangerous place. Maria smiles with relief when she sees Alfred. Her eyes are shining with tears of joy, and her trembling hands are pressed to her chest. She thanks the heavens that they are all right, but she is not yet aware of the new threat. The threatening aftershocks make Maria wary. Her face contorts in fear and she turns towards the noise. Maria understands that the situation is becoming critical again and she needs to act quickly. Alfred suddenly loses his balance due to the jolts and falls to his knees. His frightened gaze is directed at his father and Maria, who are trying to help. A new danger hangs in the air, threatening to destroy everything around him. Maria sees Alfredo at the edge of the cliff with alarm. She clasps her hands and calls his name with a look of panic. Her face is filled with despair, and her hair flies away from the sudden movement of air. Alfred, surprised by Maria's voice, turns to look at her. His eyes widen, confused and unable to believe he can hear her. The dark setting of the cave heightens the tension, highlighting his fear and uncertainty. Maria stretches out her arms to Alfred, begging him to jump. She is ready to catch him despite all the danger. Her confident tone and decisive actions inspire the boy with hope and faith in salvation. Alfred, plucking up his courage, leaps towards Maria. His body seems to float in the air, and Maria stretches out her arms to catch him. Their eyes meet, and in that moment, fate hangs in the balance. Maria catches the boy, hugging him tightly. She looks at Alfred anxiously, asking if he is hurt. Her face reflects concern and relief, while the boy looks tired but unharmed. Alfred dismisses her concerns, insisting that he is fine. He chides Maria for her loud scream, playfully complaining about the ringing in his ears. The moment is filled with warm concern and a hint of humor. Maria suddenly realizes that her voice has returned. She pauses for a moment, stunned by the discovery. A mixture of surprise and joy crosses her face as she whispers the words, as if testing herself. Hugging Alfred, Maria is delighted that she can actually speak again. Her voice is soft and confident. She realizes that in her panic and concern for the boy, she completely missed this important event. Zakar appears, watching the proceedings intently. His expression of surprise and slight concern gives way to a question about whether Maria has really found her voice. He looks at her as if he can't believe his eyes. Maria confirms this with a smile. She presses her hands to her chest, feeling relief and happiness. The return of her voice symbolizes victory over difficulties, and her confident smile illuminates the dark walls of the cave. Maria, overcoming her fear, finds a voice in her despair, calling out to Alfred. The boy looks lost and weak, but her words touch his heart. Her gentle touch brings them both hope in the dark and dangerous cave. Alfred, not yet aware of what has happened, sees Maria's joy and embraces her face with his small hands. He smiles for the first time in a long time, as if coming alive thanks to her presence and care. Maria and Alfred laugh and cry together, their happiness bringing light to a dark place. She thanks him, and Alfred responds with a beaming smile, his heart filling with a warmth that has been missing for so long. Meanwhile, Zakar watches them, his gaze serious and full of anxiety. He does not take his eyes off Maria and Alfred, checking their condition and thinking about further steps in this critical situation. The workers outside, having illuminated the passage, finally find the lost ones. Their voices reach Maria, filled with relief. They shout, hoping that everything is okay and that Maria and Alfred survived. Maria, hearing the rescuers, gathers her strength and asks for help. Her voice sounds confident and decisive, as if all the difficulties are behind her. Hope finally turns into reality. Later, in a cozy room, Maria covers Alfred and thanks him for his courage. Her gentle look and words bring the boy peace after the horror he has experienced. As she leaves, she closes the door and bids Alfred good night. The boy is already asleep, warm and safe, unaware that Maria is leaving him with new, disturbing thoughts. She stops, looking forward thoughtfully and resolutely, her face full of concentration. She makes an important decision that will determine their future fate. Finally, Maria knocks on the heavy door, breaking the silence of the night. She waits for an answer, ready to take the next step in the fight for Alfred's safety and their future together. Maria stands in front of the massive door, asking for permission to enter. She looks worried and has clearly come with some important purpose. Her voice is determined, and she waits for a response from inside before entering. Zakar is sitting on the balcony. He turns around when he hears footsteps, but his expression remains calm and slightly distant. In the silence of the night, his gaze meets the guest, and he wonders what brought her here at such a late hour. Maria resolutely hands over the first aid kit and assures him that she has come to take care of him. She reminds him of possible injuries and demonstrates her serious attitude towards his health, not tolerating objections. Zakar dismisses her concerns, saying that the injury is nothing. Maria, frowning, questions his words. Her confidence and sarcastic tone show that she is not going to give up so easily. Maria insists on her own, explaining that neglected injuries can lead to complications. She businesslike places the first aid kit on the table and urges Zakar to accept her help, despite his stubbornness. Zakar sits next to her, looking away with displeasure, insisting that he is fine. Maria looks at him with a sly smile, making it clear that his protests will not help. She will do as she sees fit anyway. Maria recalls a moment in the past when she was comforting a crying boy. She patiently explained that the pain would pass and that the wound would be treated in just a few seconds. Her voice was soft but firm. At this moment, Maria notices the similarity between Zakar and that boy. He is just as stubborn and does not like to be treated. Her gaze becomes thoughtful, and a gentle smile appears on her face, full of memories. She asks Zakar to show his injuries, not tolerating any further objections. Zakar, looking awkward, looks away, feeling vulnerable before her insistence and concern, which he is not used to accepting. Maria suddenly feels embarrassed, noticing Zakar's muscles when he finally agrees. The sudden closeness and awareness of the situation makes her feel awkward, and she internally asks herself why she suddenly feels so strange. Maria looks at Zakar's wounds with concern, noticing that they are much more serious than she expected. Her heart is squeezed with guilt that he received such injuries for her sake. Zakar, noticing her anxiety, tries to calm Maria down. He claims that it was his decision to protect her and that she is not to blame. His words are filled with calm confidence. Maria looks at him in surprise, not knowing what to say. Zakar thanks her for bandaging his bleeding wounds. He notes that her help was very timely. Maria smiles and says that she wanted to be at least a little useful. She admits with relief that it is only thanks to his self-sacrifice that she is sitting here unharmed. Despite her words, Maria asks Zakar not to hide his injuries in the future. Zakar sullenly replies that this is not a reason to worry, not wanting to draw attention to his suffering. Zakar admits that the thought that something bad could happen to Maria was unbearable for him. These words reveal his true feelings and tender care. Maria looks at Zakar with sadness, realizing how hard it was for him to confess. She calmly confirms that she understands everything perfectly well and appreciates his actions. Silence reigns in the room when Zakar decides to explain his guilt. He remembers the moment when he deliberately pushed Maria down the stairs, forcing her to endure a difficult ordeal. Now Zakar admits his mistake and regretfully asks for forgiveness for that situation. His words are full of sincerity and remorse, which surprises Maria. Maria smiles, noting Zakar's honesty. She looks at him with admiration, feeling how something more is being born between them, trust and mutual understanding. Maria happily sticks a bandage on Zakar's shoulder, and he winces in pain, trying to move away. Despite the situation, her words and smile emphasize her bold but caring character, and Zakar looks embarrassed. Melio is in the garden apologizing for the recent troubles. He is reserved, but his soft smile and gesture show sincerity and respect. His apology hints at the awkward situation that everyone has recently experienced. Zakar expresses gratitude for the support. He holds himself confidently but reservedly. Behind him, Maria stands next to Alfred, and her calm expression speaks of the returned voice as the result of trials. Melio, with a slight smile, claims that fate itself directed them to the cave. His words sound mysterious, as if the events were unfolding according to someone's plan. Maria, watching him, feels her heart beat faster involuntarily. Maria smiles sincerely, expressing relief after all the difficulties that have occurred. She looks content and confident, her words echoing a sense of gratitude for the restored peace and tranquility. Zakar notices that Maria has changed a lot since her marriage. She stands before him, her gaze serious and full of calm strength. It seems that her new experience has made her even more self-confident. Maria smiles lightly in response, saying that a happy life changes everyone. A light laugh escapes her lips, and Alfred, standing next to them, looks at them with curiosity, not quite understanding the adult conversations. Zakar and Maria are about to leave, holding Alfred's hand. But suddenly Melio calls out to them. His serious face and voice attract Zakar's attention, who turns to him, feeling uneasy. Melio approaches, out of breath, and apologizes for his unexpected appearance. His concern alarms everyone, especially Zakar, who begins to wonder what could have happened this time. Melio reports disturbing news. The ship carrying the silver was caught in a storm and capsized. A sunken silver bar can be seen against the gloomy water, foreshadowing new troubles for the heroes. Duke Zakar suddenly receives disturbing news. Something has happened to the ship, and the news is worrying his family. Maria and Alfred watch his reaction with concern, but he remains serious, lost in thought. After learning the details from his loyal subordinate Melio, Zakar finds out that the ship's crew has been saved, but the cargo of silver collected with such difficulty has been lost. This blow forces the Duke to consider urgent measures. A picture of a sunken ship emerges in his mind. Chests of silver and valuables rest on the seabed. The loss of a huge capital becomes a real threat. Zakar decides to act immediately. He understands that it is urgent to find a replacement for the lost jewel and restore the lost trust. The Duke ponders the tasks ahead. Melio cautiously asks if the king knows about what happened. Zakar confirms that His Majesty knows nothing yet, but adds that this will soon have to be corrected. Maria and Alfred anxiously eavesdrop on the conversation. The Duke is resolute in his message that diplomatic matters must be settled without wasting time. He goes to the palace, demonstrating confidence and readiness to deal with the problem, despite the scale of the difficulties. Maria sadly sees Zakar off, surprised by his sudden departure, since they had just returned home. With an understanding sigh, she agrees to look after Alfred, despite her own fatigue. As Zakar's carriage disappears into the distance, Maria stands with Alfred, tenderly holding his hand. She asks the Duke to be careful, knowing that difficult trials lie ahead. Maria and Alfred return to the house. Maria finally allows herself to rest, sinking tiredly onto the sofa. She reflects on how much strength and patience it will take to overcome the current crisis. Alfred, worried about his father, quietly asks if everything will be okay. His sad eyes and weak voice show how much he worries. The boy wants to help and hopes that Zakar will return with good news. Maria gently strokes Alfred's head, watching the boy lie limply on her lap. She realizes that his job is far from easy and requires great patience and strength from him. Warm care fills the moment with coziness. Lying and staring into space, Maria thinks about her life. She realizes that she never planned to have children. Thoughts of family life seem alien to her, but now there is a boy in front of her who seems to demand her attention and warmth. Alfred, lying on his knees, feels insecure and wonders what is wrong with him. Maria cannot help but notice that the boy is special. Her thoughts go further. Alfred has not just abilities, but something unique, beyond the ordinary. As Maria reminisces, she turns to Alfred in her mind. She remembers how she once asked him to tell her more about his powers. The boy readily shares this knowledge, leaving her slightly surprised. In response to her request, Alfred perks up and stands up, declaring that Maria is also unusual. His eyes shine with delight, and his smile is filled with confidence. This confession makes her look at herself in a new way. Then Maria remembers Alfred's words about his mother and grandmother. They also had this power, but it brought them a lot of pain and suffering. Because of this, he was bequeathed to keep his abilities a secret from others. Maria thinks about what was said and understands the logic. If someone unkind learned about Alfred's powers, they would undoubtedly use them for their own selfish purposes. The thought of possible danger makes her think about the importance of protecting the boy. Maria turns her attention to Alfred Brown, who seems sullen. He looks unhappy, which attracts her attention. A dark aura thickens around the boy, as if he is rejecting the stranger's presence. She notices how hard it is for him. Alfred admits that he hears many unpleasant voices. This torments him, so he tried to avoid people, not letting anyone close. Loneliness and despair accumulated inside him, which are difficult to express in words. Maria understands how hard it was for Alfred. His confession makes her truly sympathetic. She realizes that the boy struggles daily with something that others do not see. Her heart aches with pity. However, Alfred suddenly adds that his ability helped him become friends with Maria. For him, this is happiness. He smiles, revealing for the first time the bright side of his power, which brings him real joy. Maria admires the boy's sincerity. She hugs him, not hiding her emotions. Alfred's words touch her deeply, and she calls him amazing, emphasizing his kindness and courage. She smiles with him. Alfred laughs happily at her warmth. For him, this act of caring is the most valuable thing he can receive. He wants his father to feel this relief and stop worrying. His eyes shine with hope. Maria agrees with him, understanding how important it is to support each other. She recalls the tragic incident with the ship carrying silver. What happened was a turning point for many people around. She is sure that Zakar spoke about finding an alternative to silver to cope with the situation. These words come back to her mind as an important key to solving the problem that troubled their world. Realization lights up Maria's face. She understands that their powers and knowledge can help them overcome difficulties. She looks at Alfred with hope, deciding to support him no matter what. Now, sitting next to him, Maria feels a surge of confidence. The warm atmosphere of their conversation fills her with determination to help not only Alfred, but also those who need her support. Maria examines the unusual black stone and comes to the conclusion that this is exactly what she needs. Her face expresses satisfaction, and confidence appears in her eyes. The find can solve their current problems. Alfred is amazed by the huge number of books in the library. He stands with his eyes wide open, and Maria is intently studying the shelves. They are full of hope to find the answer among the many books. Maria is sure that such a rich library will contain information that will help them understand the situation. She approaches the table, piled high with books, and resolutely begins her search. Soon Maria finds a book with a picture of a stone similar to the one she holds. She triumphantly exclaims that this is the mineral they were looking for and carefully reads the description. The book makes it clear that the stone has a metallic sheen and is brown with black veins. Maria compares the description with the find and is convinced that it is definitely tin. She confidently declares that there is no doubt. It is tin. Alfred joyfully reacts to her words, rejoicing and shouting with delight. For them, this is an important discovery, bringing them closer to solving their problems. Maria explains that tin is a versatile material that can be used to make many useful things. She holds the find with reverence, realizing its value. She speculates that tin could become the basis of an entire industrial sector. The possibilities are endless, and this discovery could significantly change their future. Maria and Alfred decide to return home quickly to share the important news. Maria thanks Alfred for his help, and they hurry to leave the library. Melio meets them at the gate. He is surprised to see them and anxiously asks where they have been. Maria replies that they went to the library, and Zakar, judging by Melio's words, has returned, but it is better to stay away from him. Maria speaks sternly to Melio, who looks worried. She talks about the danger of the situation with the ship. Her words sound sharp, like a sharp knife, and cause Melio great anxiety. After this, Maria, without wasting time, instructs Melio to look after Alfred while she goes to solve important issues. Melio agrees with a smile, and little Alfred, watching him, is sincerely happy. Approaching the massive door, Maria knocks decisively. Her goal is obvious. She intends to see Zakar despite his busy schedule. The Duke's questioning voice is heard behind the door. Who? Zakar looks tired and distracted when he sees Maria enter. Without raising his head from the papers, he says that he is busy now. But Maria is determined to convey important information. Maria comes closer, her voice confident. She says that she has something important to tell. Zakar looks at her tensely, preparing to hear what happened. Maria shows Zakar a strange stone. The Duke, looking at it intently, begins to analyze the situation. He understands that the stone was found during their last visit, and its origin is significant. Maria explains that she did some research to find out what kind of stone it was. All doubts were dispelled. It was tin. The seriousness of her words is emphasized by her decisive tone and confident look. Zakar is surprised, but does not fully understand why this is important. Maria explains that the mine is full of tin and it is sold at the price of silver. This news can change the economic situation of the duchy. Zakar asks what is special about tin. Maria readily answers that tin is softer than silver and much easier to work with. She raises her finger, showing that this is an important advantage. Maria's words sound confident and encouraging. It is now clear to the Duke that the discovery of tin will open up new opportunities for development and strengthening of their positions. Maria enthusiastically tells Zakar how useful tin can be. It is easy to process and is suitable for making household items. She emphasizes that this metal does not rust and looks almost like silver. Zakar, lost in thought, wonders why such a valuable resource has not yet been used in the country. Maria enthusiastically continues to explain that proper development of the deposits will bring the country huge profits, turning useless stones into wealth. Zakar looks at the girl skeptically and wonders where she got such knowledge from. He is surprised and wary, because what she says goes beyond the usual ideas about a noble girl. Maria panics, realizing that she has let something slip. She pretends to answer casually, but inside she is worried. The girl smiles, trying to maintain her composure, and finds an excuse for her words. Gathering her courage, Maria confidently states that her family owns the mines. She adds that such knowledge is natural for her as an heir to the Darn line, as the mines require an understanding of mining and resource management. Zakar thinks doubtfully about what he heard about Maria earlier. He cannot believe that her reputation, consisting of rumors and speculation, turned out to be false. Before him appears a girl with extraordinary determination and determination. Smiling, Zakar admits that he was wrong about her, like everyone else. Maria turns out to be much more insightful and significant than he assumed. Respect and interest in her personality appear in his eyes. Maria, noticing the change in Zakar's attitude, smiles triumphantly. She emphasizes that she should not be taken lightly because her knowledge and experience are the result of long and hard work, even if no one suspects it. Zakar admits with surprise that Maria has become a real discovery for him. He notes that her behavior goes beyond the usual and arouses genuine interest. She is very different from his expectations and ideas. Maria, with a slight blush, asks Zakar if he is praising her. Zakar nods reservedly, confirming her guess. This moment of their invisible confrontation gives way to mutual recognition of merits and respect for each other. Zakar sat at his desk, lost in thought. He had been trying to find a replacement for the silver all this time, since its supply was vital to the country. He told them that the ship that was carrying the silver to Halim had sunk, and now he was responsible for a new mission. It is clear that the weight of what happened is weighing on Zakar. He was thinking hard about how to solve the problem, because everyone had placed their hopes on him. Maria, noticing his condition, came up and decided to intervene, offering something unusual, holding a strange object in her hands. Maria confidently claimed that her discovery could help Zakar. Her energy confused him a little, but he still listened to her. Despite his doubts, Maria was full of enthusiasm and insisted that this would definitely solve some of his problems. Zakar thought about it and immediately decided to write a letter to his brother. He understood that this was an important step to launch a new business that needed to be built from scratch. He hoped that his brother would be able to quickly help and respond to his request. Grateful for the support, Zakar accepted Maria's gift with a smile. His eyes reflected the hope that it would really work. He appreciated her care and efforts, especially at such a difficult moment. Maria, in turn, reminded Zakar that they could always solve problems together. She recalled how he saved her in the cave and assured him that she would be there in the future. Her words inspired him to take new steps and actions. Then Maria, satisfied with the conversation, decided to leave, leaving Zakar alone with his thoughts. She promised that he would definitely cope, and she went off to do her own thing. Zakar watched her leave with relief. Suddenly, Maria stumbled and almost fell. Zakar stood up abruptly, calling out to her with concern. This moment interrupted the seriousness of their conversation, adding comicality to the situation. Maria, embarrassed, noticed that Zakar was too close and managed to catch her. She noted with confusion that Zakar's arms were incredibly strong and tried to hide her excitement, reproaching him for being rude. Zakar noticed with slight irritation but a kind smile that Maria was heavier than she looked. She flushed with resentment, and he held her as if nothing had happened. Despite the awkwardness, their interaction showed trust and a deep connection between them. Maria, the white-haired girl, pushes Zakhar's hand away, expressing irritation and quickly thanks him for his help before leaving. Her anger and pride clearly flare up in the moment, causing the Duke to fall silent in surprise. Zakhar looks at Maria, dumbfounded, as she leaves, trying to understand the reason for her behavior. He thinks about his intention to help, and about the fact that the girl reacted much more sharply than he expected, causing him to bewilder. Maria, left alone, happily examines the box with beautiful glasses that Zakhar gave her. She gently touches one of the glasses and smiles admiringly, recognizing its beauty and value. Inspired by the gift, Maria holds the glass in front of her and admits that she would like to have the same one. Zakhar looks at her attentively and agrees without hesitation, showing his willingness to fulfill her wish. Later, Zakhar says that the king expressed a positive opinion about the crisis, which benefited the country. His speech is serious and respectful, which emphasizes the importance of Maria's ideas for the state. Maria, in the company of Zakhar and his subordinate Melio, learns that her idea was successful. Zakhar, not hiding his pride, reported this to the king, which causes Maria slight anxiety and confusion. Embarrassed by the attention, Maria explains that she simply shared her thoughts without expecting such a result. She worries that this may attract unnecessary attention and fears possible consequences. Zakhar, holding a glass, assures Maria that her ideas and contributions are important. He emphasizes that she is not the villain she is considered to be, and sees in her a serious attitude towards the future of the country. Struck by Zakhar's words, Maria freezes in thought. She realizes that the Duke is gradually beginning to approve of her and acknowledge her efforts. These thoughts evoke in her a warm feeling of gratitude and surprise. Maria, smiling and beaming with happiness, accepts the new circumstances. Zakhar's praise and support fill her with joy, and tender emotions are reflected on her face, giving her confidence and satisfaction. Maria thinks with satisfaction that her actions help to avoid inevitable death. She looks at Duke Zakhar with a sly smile, hiding her true intentions and rejoicing in a small victory. However, Maria understands that the path to complete security will not be easy. She realizes that even more efforts and clever solutions are needed to confidently say that the threat has been eliminated once and for all. Melio, standing nearby, starts a conversation about the current trade situation. He reports that accessories, especially glasses and items made of special metal, are becoming increasingly popular, which arouses interest and joy among those present. Melio goes on to explain that the market is flooded with manufacturers because of the ease of processing the new ore. He emphasizes that products made from this material are beautiful and rust-resistant, which makes them especially sought after. Maria smiles at the positive news. She is glad that the situation is working in their favor and notes that such successes have great potential for her family and the nation as a whole. But the thought of her family makes her think. She is worried and concerned about how her father will perceive this situation. Maria wonders if his interests will be satisfied as well, or if he will be dissatisfied. She carefully asks Zakhar about her father. Maria tries to speak calmly, but the anxiety on her face reveals her deep concern about her family situation and the consequences of what happened. Zakhar, a little surprised, confirms that Maria's father did not say anything special. He mentions that the relationship between Maria's father and the king has worsened recently, which only increases the tension in the room. Sitting at the table, Zakhar looks calm and collected, but his answer is extremely laconic. He assures Maria that nothing critical has happened and no significant changes in the situation are expected. However, the atmosphere in the room is tense. Maria and Zakhar exchange glances, and Melio watches their reactions carefully. All three understand that this meeting could be a turning point for their future. Zakhar confidently explains that the tin was extracted from mines and pits owned by his family. He assures that everyone got their share, even with the promotion. His composure and confidence leave no doubt about the truth of his words. Maria sighs heavily and agrees not to continue the conversation. She looks tired and depressed, as if she was tormented by doubts. Her gestures betray her weariness and reluctance to engage in further argument. Maria admits that her anxiety was related to her father, who, she says, is capable of causing trouble because of his greed. Her face expresses anxiety and uncertainty, as if she feared the worst outcome of the situation. Maria is suddenly surprised by Zakhar's reaction. Her face changes, and the expression in her eyes becomes wary. The situation takes an unexpected turn, as if she did not expect it. Zakhar says with mild surprise that he did not think that Maria was so critical of her father. Melio stands nearby, listening attentively to the conversation. Maria waves her hand and giggles, as if embarrassed by her confession. Getting up from the table, Maria assures that this is the end of her conversation. She looks determined, although there is some nervousness in her movements. Zakhar remains calm, silently observing her actions. Maria is in a good mood, discussing business and thanking her brother for his support in solving important issues. She is proud of his actions and believes that decency is rare in their family. However, the letter evokes mixed emotions in her. Reading the letter, Maria is amazed at how quickly Daniel solved a problem that their father would hardly have found time for. She is glad that their family has a person capable of prompt action. Maria's thoughts are filled with admiration for her brother. While thinking about her brother, Maria notices Alfred running away from the window. She freezes in confusion and wonders what could have happened. She is worried about where the boy is heading at such a strange time. Maria notices Alfred walking towards the forest. She becomes worried and looks at the dark sky, which promises a thunderstorm. The weather worsens and her anxiety increases as the storm approaches faster and faster. Suddenly, the door bursts open and an agitated maid runs into the room. She is breathing heavily and reports that Alfred is nowhere to be found. Maria tries to remain calm, but the agitation is evident in her voice and facial expression. Zakhar appears in the hall and notices with alarm that the storm is getting worse. He asks Maria questions about what happened. She reports that she saw Alfred heading into the forest, which causes even more concern for everyone present. Zakhar, frowning, ponders what could have made the boy go into the forest in such weather. Maria adds that she feels that this is not just a coincidence, and her intuition tells her that there is something more behind it. Melio runs up to them, reporting an urgent incident. His face expresses alarm, and his quick steps and ragged breathing indicate that the situation is becoming increasingly critical. Zakhar and Maria prepare to act immediately. Maria resolutely takes control of the situation. She throws on her cloak and insists that they must find Alfred immediately. Zakhar understands that there is no time to waste, and together with Maria, he heads for the exit despite the raging elements. The storm is getting worse and the atmosphere is getting tense. Zakhar, Maria, and Melio, full of determination, go into the forest to look for Alfred. Their anxiety increases with every step, and the raging wind only adds to the drama of what is happening. Melio, worried and tired, reports that he has searched the entire mansion but could not find the person he was looking for. His voice sounds anxious, and there is tension in the air, as if time is running out. Maria reacts to the news with visible excitement. Her eyes are full of anxiety, and she seems to be making an important decision. She quickly comes to the conclusion that she should look not in the mansion, but outside of it, in the forest. Suddenly deciding to act, Maria rushes to the exit, certain that the answers are hidden in the forest. She hurries, preparing to leave the mansion despite the bad weather and potential danger. Zakhar stops Maria, warning that it is too dangerous to go alone. He offers his help, deciding to accompany her into the forest. Maria seems stubborn but does not reject his support. Melio, watching them, insists that they should not take risks together. He suggests that they go searching with the servants, believing it to be a safer option than going into the darkness alone. Zakhar, with a determined look, declares that the responsibility for the search lies with him. He gives his name, reminding that as Alfred's father, he cannot leave the situation to chance. His words sound firm. Melio looks at Zakhar with tension, but eventually gives in. He admits that it is Zakhar who must take this risk. His voice trembles with emotion, but he backs down and agrees with the Duke's arguments. Bowing in respect, Melio agrees with Zakhar's decision and remains where he is. He understands that all he can do is wait while the Duke searches for answers in the forest. The atmosphere remains heavy. In the forest, Maria stays behind Zakhar, who protects her from the weather. He encourages her to stay close to avoid danger. Maria expresses gratitude, but her voice remains anxious. Maria suddenly notices something ahead and points to the darkness between the trees. She calls out to Zakar, pointing to the exact spot. Her words are interrupted by the wind, but there is hope in their voices that the search will finally be successful. Alfred sits on the grass in the pouring rain, clutching a small kitten in his arms. Zakar and Maria notice him from afar and anxiously head towards him. The boy's face is sad and downward, reflecting deep anxiety. As Zakar and Maria come closer, Alfred raises his head and calls out to them. He looks weak and desperate, as if he had been alone in the rain for a long time, and his clothes were soaked through. Zakar is outraged that Alfred went outside in such terrible weather. He looks sternly at the boy and demands an explanation. Maria looks with concern, trying to understand what happened. Alfred says with a trembling voice that he wanted to protect the kitten, who was all alone during the storm. There are tears in the boy's eyes, and his words sound so sincere that it is difficult not to be touched. However, Zakar remains adamant. He orders Alfred to leave the kitten here and return home. His voice sounds harsh, and he does not want to listen to objections. Alfred looks scared and confused. Unwilling to submit, Alfred exclaims that he will not leave the kitten under any circumstances. He hugs the animal to his chest, protecting it from the rain. Maria watches the argument, her face both anxious and gentle. Tears stream down Alfred's face as he insists that if the kitten is left here, it will die. His voice is full of despair, and his eyes beg for mercy for the little creature. Maria, seeing Alfred's devotion, approaches him and places a reassuring hand on his head. She gently tells him that everything will be fine and promises that they will take the kitten home with them. Alfred lifts his tear-stained face and, sobbing, asks if the kitten will really come with them. His eyes shine with a faint hope, but he is still unsure of the answer. Maria smiles and warmly confirms that they will take the kitten. Her soft smile calms Alfred, and the bright atmosphere drives away the darkness that reigned in his heart. Maria and Alfred get caught in the rain. Maria, noticing their difficult situation, emphasizes that the most important thing now is to return home as soon as possible. Zakar monitors their condition, realizing that Alfred and Maria need help. Despite his fatigue, Zakar agrees to take the kitten with him. He understands that the situation requires a quick solution and supports Maria in her efforts to help Alfred and the animal. His determination is evident in his actions, despite the inconvenience. Returning home, Maria immediately orders a hot bath for Alfred. She understands that the boy needs to warm up after being out in the rain for so long, and she shows concern and seriousness in her words. Maria, smiling, assures Alfred that she will take care of the kitten. Alfred, not hiding his concern, hopes that Maria will keep her promise and look after the animal. In response, Maria expresses firm confidence, instilling calm in the boy. Smiling at Maria, Alfred feels gratitude and admiration. To him, she looks like a guardian angel, able to protect him and the little kitten. Maria, bathing the kitten, shows tenderness and care, which delights Alfred. Zakar suddenly interrupts the idyll, turning to Maria. His discontent grows when he sees Maria taking care of a kitten. He is convinced that stray animals carry diseases and pose a danger to the family. Zakar demands to get rid of the kitten, claiming that he is the head of the family and will not tolerate such an animal in the house. His sternness and determination are evident in his voice, emphasizing his confidence in his words. Maria resolutely refuses to obey, reminding him that she has already promised Alfred to take care of the kitten. Her words sound firm, and she does not intend to break this promise, despite pressure from Zakar. Zakar is angry at Maria's stubbornness, claiming that his word should be law. He insists that the kitten cannot remain in the house as it threatens the health of all its inhabitants. His emotions are running high. Maria remains unyielding, looking Zakar firmly in the eyes. Her determination to protect Alfred and the kitten is unwavering. She is ready to go to conflict for the sake of a promise that is more important to her than all the Duke's arguments. Maria anxiously shouts at Zakar, demanding that he stop interfering. She painfully reminds him that Alfred risked his life because of the cat. Her words are full of determination, and her facial expression betrays anger and despair. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Maria declares that she will take responsibility for the cat's life. She is confident in her decision and will not allow anyone to harm the little creature, despite all the risks. Zakar looks at Maria wearily, acknowledging her stubbornness. He decides to call a vet to check the cat and suggests isolating the animal to avoid further problems. His voice sounds irritated but with concern. Maria thanks Zakar, continuing to tenderly care for the kitten. She carefully washes his paws in water, and Zakar leaves, leaving her alone. At this moment, there is silence around them, full of tense calm. Alfred slowly opens his eyes, his face pale, but his gaze full of concern. He immediately looks for the cat. Maria holds the animal in her arms and shows with a warm smile that everything is okay with him. In a weak voice, Alfred asks to know about the cat's health. Maria reassures him, assuring him that the pet is alive and well. Her words sound soft and encouraging, filling the room with an atmosphere of trust and calm. Alfred smiles, his face relaxing. He thanks Maria for her concern and finally allows himself to rest. The boy's eyes close, and a weak but happy smile remains on his lips. Zakar returns and quietly asks Maria about Alfred's condition. His voice sounds worried, but restrained. Maria turns around and reports that the boy has fallen asleep, as the illness has greatly weakened his strength. Watching Alfred, Zakar silently reflects on his nobility. He is surprised at how courageous and selfless the boy was, whose actions evoke deep respect and admiration in him. Maria continues to hold the cat in her arms, her gaze remaining soft and calm. Zakar sits down on the edge of the bed, continuing to look at Alfred. A silent understanding of the importance of the connection that now unites them arises between them.